This is the class that's nearest and dearest to my heart. I love this class because I think that out of all the things that you can learn in the world of computer security, learning the concepts associated with cyber deception have some of the quickest wins that you can possibly get in the world of computer security for defending your networks. Doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be difficult. You can implement it very easily, and we're going to show you how. I want to talk a little bit about the class virtual machines. Now, when you registered for this class, you got an email. You're here. It's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. But also, if you're looking in the entire class build, you'll be able to see that we have a class virtual machine, and there is a link to MetaCTF. If you're looking at this in a live setting, you would go into Discord and you would go to resources. A lot of really important stuff in resources in Discord for this class, including the link for getting started and setting up your virtual machines for this course. Let's go through and let's show you what that actually looks like here now. All right. So when you get set up in that link for MetaCTF, it's going to tell you to go register at MetaCTF for an account. And then it's also going to tell you to log into that account, and you're going to have a link up here at the top called Cloud Labs. Just go through the standard registration for MetaCTF. You select Cloud Labs. Once you are in Cloud Labs, you'll have nothing below. I have stuff here. I have stuff here. I do. But that's because I've already registered for my classes. You will put in the class code in that document. In that document right at the top, it says enter this class code and hit submit, and it'll activate the courses for you. And then they'll show up down below. Now, for all of my classes, you get 16 hours of free lab access as part of the course. You get 16 hours for that. And if you want to gain access to those labs, you go view, manage labs. We're in the cyber deception class. So I'm going to go into active defense and cyber deception with John Strand. If you have been through a number of my other classes, yes, this is a new course build. It's a brand new course build, and you get a brand new 16 hours for this course. So you want to make sure, even if you've taken my classes before, you're going to want to go into this course build because it is separate, unique, distinct, special, and wondrous. Okay. Once you get in, call your attention to a couple of really important things. The first thing I want to call out is this button right here. It says Start Lab. The lab is built in two separate virtual machines in the cloud. One is a Windows Server 2022 build. The other one is a Kali build. You're going to want to start them both. To start them both, you're going to select Start Lab. This will start both of those virtual machines. It takes a while for those virtual machines in the cloud to start up. In just a second here where it says connect via browser RDP, it will start doing a countdown timer, I think from like 130 seconds. And it'll start ticking down for that time as it's standing up that virtual machine. You do not need to access your Linux machine directly. You can access everything from your Windows RDP session. And I'll explain that here in a couple of moments. You can see it starting up. I have 120 seconds left. By the way, great show in the 90s on MTV. Check out 120 minutes. Absolutely great alternative music in the 80s and 90s. Fantastic. You need to check it out. Now, the other thing that you need to look at up here, and this is hyper important, is your balance of credits and your current credit usage per hour. These credits and this usage associated with these credits will tell you what your burn rate is for your virtual machines. When you're not using your virtual machines, you're going to want to make sure that you power them off or destroy the lab. Both are fine options. I usually destroy and restart every single time because I start with a clean slate. That is the equivalent right there of turning it off and on again. Just click destroy lab, turns it off, turns it back on. Now, if you get to the point where you run out of credits, you can select billing and credits, and you can charge more credits to your credit card. As I said, as part of this course for pay what you can and everything that we are doing, we have it set up, should have enough credits to do all of the labs in this course at no extra charge. But you're going to want to come back and you're going to want to do these labs again because it's fun. And for that, you can choose 25 credits, 10 credits, 75 credits. You can buy it. and you can set it up on Stripe. Do not enable automatic reload. We have the VMs set to automatically shut off after 4 hours because my class sessions are 4 hours, but you just want to make sure it's not going to just burn your credit card. That is disabled by default. All right. So that gets you set up and ready to go and how you buy more credits for your labs, how you get things set up, which is awesome. Now, the next thing I want to show you is where the labs are. All of my labs are publicly available out on GitHub. So for this, I'm just going to do a search for Strand.js, GitHub. Go down to that. That's a good one there. And I'm going to share this link in Discord here. Got our intro labs. I'm going to go to intro class files. I'm going to go to navigation, and I'm going to share this out on Discord in the resources. I'm going to share this in Discord out on the resources. Somebody said, did you update your Discord or your resources? I sure did. It's brand spanking new. We moved it all over to Strand.js. We updated everything. It's all kinds of new things set up there. So I've got the link for the labs are in resources, and we also have it set up here as well. So editors kind of talking to the group directly. All right, so let's go back. So once you get set up in navigation, once you are here, we have all the labs for intro to SOC core skills. We have all the labs for intro to security. We have all the labs for cyber deception. These are going to be the labs that we will be doing. We'll be doing spider trap, Cowrie, canary tokens, Rita, Bluespawn, port spoof, honey badger, honey share, honey user, advanced C2, web honeypot, and setting up file audit tripwires. So we have a lot of hands-on. This first part of today is going to be a lot of establishing the ground rules and what we're talking about, just kind of setting it up so you're ready to go. And it's going to be awesome. Just stick with me this first part of this morning, describing what cyber deception actually is as well. So I've updated all of these labs. We now have a handy dandy logo. We've got updated screenshots. So it's now in Cloud Labs. I spent all weekend working on these, getting them set up. So we're ready to go. So that's good. You can jump back to the main navigator and go back to the labs list at any time. So we're ready to rock. But now let's go back to MetaCTF. Let's look at our VMs. All right, so once we have this set up and it's now running, I can connect via browser. I select connect via browser via RDP, and it's going to utilize Guacamole to authenticate to the Windows Server 2022 system. Logs us in as administrator, because you should do all of your work logged in as an administrator account all of the time. That's the best way. I mean, any class that you ever take, you should be logged in as administrator or root. Do everything via administrator or root, preferably with a weak password. If you get this pop-up, click yes. We want systems to be able to communicate with each other. Also, you should disable your firewall at all times. I'm joking. I'm being sarcastic, of course. You don't want to do those things, but I'm just joking around. All right, that's what we call stalling for time while the VM starts. Ooh, coffee. Yes, that's good coffee. All right, once we are started up, we have a number of things that are super easy for you to do that tie into the labs in GitHub. The first thing is Kali. If I want to open a Kali terminal, I just double click on the Kali icon. I'm going to get an error here, and you're going to accept the key fingerprint. You're just connecting to your Kali system technically for the first time. And now I have a full Kali system set up. I do not access Kali directly from the Kali interface and MetaCTF. I access it from my Windows system. It's a lot easier that way. The next thing that I have is I have a Windows command prompt. I select Windows command prompt. Bam, there it is. And then also a PowerShell command prompt, because we will be doing things via PowerShell in this course as we progress throughout the next couple of days. Now, it takes a while for PowerShell to start the first time, and that's perfectly normal. There I have it up and running. All right, so now I'm ready to go. I am ready to rock and roll for all of my labs. So I'm going to go back to my slides now that we've talked about the class virtual machines, and we did a little bit of getting to know the virtual machines as well. By the way, if you have any issues, please go over to tech support in the Discord server and get some support, or you can email support at Anti-Siphon Security Training, and we will help you out, because that's our number one goal. It's not to get people frustrated with VMs or any of this stuff. We're trying to make it as easy as we possibly can for everybody to get through this class. All right, so what is this course and how is it actually different? Well, this course is different because the concepts associated with this class are fundamentally kind of counter to what most of information security is trying to teach you. I'll go on a whole bunch of rants, tangential rants, probably not going to go on an OSI model rant during this class. I apologize profusely. If you want to get the John Strand rant against the Open Systems Interconnect model, the 7-layer, please do not throw stale pizza away, you've got to go to Intro to SOC Core Skills or Intro to Security. This is not that class, but there are going to be rants. Oh my, there will be rants in this course. One of the big things that I'm going to be ranting against is the idea that information security and solid information security has to be expensive. It has to be something that you and your organization are willing to spend a lot of money on in order to get an acceptable level of defense for your organization. There's a ton of things that we can do in the world of active defense and cyber deception that cost little to nothing that will exponentially increase the security in your organization as well. Most of the labs are not in the slides, and that's because I like you. There's already a lot of death by PowerPoint in this class. I'm sorry for that. I'm a former recovering SANS instructor, and the first point of recovery is admitting that you have a problem. And yes, I've got a problem when it comes to PowerPoint presentations. It's just how I think. I apologize, but we've also got GitHub. We've got hands-on labs. We'll be working through all of this. Also, the class labs are accessible to you after the course. Another thing that I absolutely hate are classes where you only get access to the VMs of the class during class time. Like they set up this amazing lab and everything's wonderful. And as soon as you're done with the class, it's like, F you, kid. You got me for 16 hours. You're screwed and you're on your own. I want this stuff to be available so you all can practice. I'll go through these labs again and again and again. All the labs using the VM are inside of the VM, right? Like we have everything is contained inside of that virtual machine, and it's all on GitHub. This means you do not have to dig through hundreds of pages to figure out something and how it actually works. You can jump straight into, bam, Sysmon. You can go right into learning like Bluespawn and Red Canary, Atomic Red Team. You can do that very quickly to figure out how to do those things as well. We've also pre-recorded video walkthroughs. I say it's on the USB. It's also embedded on Discord, or it's in your LMS that you're using right now. You have full walkthroughs of all the labs. We're going to make this as easy as it can possibly be. Now, the other thing that's important about this course is we have tied this course to the MITRE Engage framework, which is a fantastic framework for us for trying to say that it's not, cyber deception is not something that is just some random crazy person on the internet who sells t-shirts and games and comic books telling us we should use cyber deception. For the last few years, MITRE has been working on a framework that is revolved around an active and engaged defense against adversaries. Now, this is, without question, incredibly important. The reason why it's important is it's not just about cyber deception and setting traps. When we're looking at the Engage framework and this class as well, we are tying the concept like understanding packet and network traffic analysis, how to set up active kind of adversarial emulation and simulation exercises in your environment. When we're looking at an engaged security approach, these are security approaches where you and your organization are going to actively work to try to improve the security. And that's not just buy a firewall and turn it on. It's not just run an EDR and run CrowdStrike and then automatically you're going to be defended. We're going to be talking about the things that you actively should be doing in your organization to further and improve the computer security for your organization. So as much as possible, I'm going to be tying the concepts that we have in this class back to MITRE and the fantastic hard work that everyone has put towards the Engage framework. If you could do me a favor, go out on the MITRE Attack Twitter and just say thank you, or on Blue Sky and say thank you to the people from the Cyber Deception Active Defense class. Let them know that you care. And the reason why this is important, reason why this is critical, if someone can go through and give a link to the Twitter accounts for MITRE Attack and MITRE Engage and the Blue Sky accounts for MITRE Attack and MITRE Engage. I think they call this on Reddit brigadiering. I'm not sure, but we're going to do that. The reason why this is absolutely critical is because the people behind organizations like MITRE, they create things like this and they're trying to get some idea of how effective and how kind of accepted is something like MITRE Engage. So if you please could go out and say, this is awesome. We appreciate it. There it is, the MITRE attack framework. Go out there. They're on Mastodon. Okay, you're on Mastodon. Linux Girl, if you can give me, like, where is that? Like, go on. If you're taking this class on demand, please do me a favor and go say thank you to them on behalf of this class, because I think it's critical. All right, so let's get into some definitions and disclaimers, right? So quick heads up, if you're taking a traditional security course, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in this class are basically things in the industry that traditionally they're like, well, that will get you into trouble. You shouldn't do those things. Now, I want to make it very clear that's wrong. I disagree with those people vehemently, and I'm going to talk about why I disagree with those people. But when you're talking about almost any activity you do in life, if you do that incorrectly, you run into a situation where you absolutely positively can get in trouble. So like driving can get you into trouble, right? So when we're talking about cyber deception, we're talking about an act of defense, there are absolutely lines that you should not cross. And as much as possible, I am going to try to share with you all what are the different ways that you can avoid any type of legal trouble that you can get into on that as well. So just please be careful. All of these things, if you don't do them right, can get you into trouble. We're going to share with you where those bright, shiny lines actually are. Also, a lot of mass people in computer security will say this is a bad idea. And I hate this. Let me give you a couple of examples. You have people like Jeff Moss, who I love dearly. Jeff Moss, like Dark Tangent, founded DEF CON, founded Black Hat, absolutely one of the most important seminal people in the industry. Great dude. Not a big fan of cyber deception. He was Black Hat Europe. He said, how often do people actually check their cyber deception technology and find things? And the point of that is it's not heavily used. Maybe we shouldn't be using it. And that was a number of years ago. I think things have changed. And I think that Jeff's probably ideas on that have modified over the past couple of years as well. But when you're looking at that, or if you're looking at Bruce Schneier, you're looking at a lot of people, they will say things like, you should do everything else correct first before you implement cyber deception in your organization. And they are wrong, all right? They are wrong. Or at least, let me put that professionally. I believe that they are incorrect. And my opinion differs. There you go. How's that for politics? But going back to why they're wrong. The reason why they're wrong is a lot of the things that we can implement in cyber deception are so quick and so easy that they can serve as a stopgap for while you're setting up other defensive approaches. For example, I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to think about post-exploitation. What are some techniques that adversaries would do as soon as they gain access to a system? Just think about this for a few moments, right? Hacker gets on the computer. They've successfully spearphished an organization. They're trying to persist. They've got that persistence. They've got it running. They're on that particular box. They want to get domain admin. What are some different tools and techniques that they would use to get domain admin and persist? Just think about it. Well, I enjoy this delicious brewberry coffee in Sturgis, South Dakota. Yeah, maybe they're going to pivot, right? Maybe, but how would they pivot? What would be the techniques? If you're writing down, you're thinking lateral movement and pivot, what would be some tools and techniques that they would do? That's some good coffee. Maybe they'll use tools like Bloodhound, right? Bloodhound. Bloodhound will identify things like Kerberoastable service accounts. Bloodhound will attempt to identify RDP systems, people with certain level of permissions. If they're running tools like Bloodhound, don't you think maybe we can set some deception traps in that pathway of Bloodhound? Maybe the attackers will do things like an internal password spray, right? Use something like, Cred Sniper, Mail Sniper, something to do a lateral movement password spray. Maybe we can create some honey accounts very quickly that whenever they're tripped in that password spray, we know that we have an active attack. Once again, Kerberoasting, creating Kerberoastable service accounts that as soon as they're touched, automatically generates an alert. Maybe the attackers are going to look for files on that environment to try to identify files with passwords in them, right? Like Excel spreadsheets with the name passwords.xls, which would totally never, ever happen on Monday at 10:25 and a whole bunch of pen tests and things that we're doing, right? Yeah, all of these things, right? So you can set up cyber deception in a very low interaction, quick, easy way that is in the pathway of those post-exploitation activities that an attacker would go through. You can do that quickly and easily, and that'll help buy you time when you're trying to stand up your SIM, which is really, really, really expensive on that as well. We're talking about tactics, though, in this course. We need to make sure that we are vetting tactics with legal, human resources, upper management. Once again, I'm going to share with you where those lines are kind of as we built this class. It's like not that big of a deal, and then it gets pretty crazy as we progress through it as well. If you're working with law enforcement to get full, long-term, persistent access on a system, you're going to want to get a warrant. I'll explain that completely when we get to the warrant section of this class. But we need to maintain these high ethical and legal standards for absolutely everything that we do. We don't want to become the thing that we are defending against. And this is something that is very difficult in this industry. We think that we are the good people, they're the bad people. We can do bad things against those people. You can't. We want to follow the rules because rules are what define and separate us from them. And we need to make sure that we have to do that. Now, I understand that that is difficult, by the way. I want you to know that that's difficult. And I'm going to give you a great quote from Egypt, someone I talk about often in my class, and I really need to talk to Egypt as well. I haven't talked to him in a long time. So, you know that quote? Let's say for a defender, you have to be right 100% of the time. 100 out of 100, you have to be correct because you're a defender. How often does an attacker have to be correct? How often? Think about that. You hear this all the time in the industry. Once, right? Once. Well, here's a thought process for you. I want you to think of it this way. Once the attacker is in your network, that calculation flips. Now, when the attacker is moving laterally, they have to be correct 100% of the time. And if we can set up deception properly, it is your network. You are home alone. You are Kevin McAllister. It is your house, and you get the opportunity to set the traps. You dictate the battle space. You dictate the tempo and where these things are. And that simple change in the way that you think about computer security makes all the difference in the world. My point is, yes, you may feel like you're at a disadvantage as a defender, but the goal of this class is to change that around. So in this class, we have a number of different things: active defense, offensive countermeasures, and all these different things, cyber deception. They all have different meanings. And I want to talk about some of these meanings because some of the things that we are going to talk about may not fall in line with what you would expect for cyber deception. Some of the things that we'll discuss in this course would fall in line with ideas of an active defense. An active defense is an employment of limited offensive actions and counterattacks to deny a contested area or position to the enemy. It's proactive, anticipatory, reactionary actions against aggressors. Now, when we're talking about this, it means you're actively doing something. You are engaged in the activities that you are doing in that organization. It is very different than a passive defense. A passive defense is an intrusion detection system. A passive defense is an intrusion prevention system. A passive defense is your EDR. It's literally sitting there on your system and it's waiting for something bad to happen. And then it's going to notify you that something bad has happened on that computer system. It is incumbent upon us to utilize those types of passive defensive approaches that we have, but we also, and this is ever so important, need to be active in the work that we do. Everybody is trying to sell you products that are passive. This is a magical tool that's going to alert you when something bad happens in your environment. This is a magical tool that's going to actively do security, orchestration, automation, and response, and it's going to soar your organization to computer security. This is a product that uses the power of artificial intelligence to stop all attacks, and all of that is garbage. Yes, those products are cool. Okay, they have value. But if you believe that you can simply turn on those products and then walk away from the security support structure of your organization, you're going to have a bad time when you get compromised. It's going to hurt real bad the whole time that you're having a bad time. So instead, of looking at these technologies as these panaceas, as these snake oils that you just set it and forget it, like the Ron Popeil commercials back in the 90s. It's like, you just set it and just forget it. Then you get turkey jerky. Everyone loves turkey jerky. Mm-mm. Even those tools require an active and engaged approach to your computer security. So we're going to be focusing on that as well. All right. So offensive countermeasures. Offensive countermeasures. I hate to use martial arts analogies. I hate to use military analogies, but sometimes they're the best analogies that we have. Aikido is a great example. Aikido is basically using someone's offensive energy and inertia against them, right? So we're going to take and redirect block opponents' attacks, and we're going to force them into something that they don't want to do. It's like if I'm punching at you, I can step out of the way, redirect that energy so they fall flat on their ass, right? Granted, I don't do martial arts. I'm probably one of the only people in the industry that doesn't do martial arts, but whatever. But you see this all the time, right? Martial arts, where someone's trying to punch something or kick something, and don't be where they're kicking and then move them elegantly to the floor as quickly as possible, right? We want to make sure that we are able to take that energy and redirect it. An example would be, I'm going to come back to this here in just a little bit, but I want to show you something. Let's go to Shodan. All right. So let's go here. So we go to Shodan, and I'm going to log in real quick so I can get access to images.shodan.io. Just wait for it. Here we go. Now we're there. Let me go up here to images. Okay, so I can put in port 5900. Anyone know what is port 5900? So you're sitting here, you're taking this class at home. What's port 5900? Do you know? Okay. Virtual network computing, right? Oh no. Is that PONT? Wait for it. It's still spinning. There we go. All right. So we got port 5900. These are VNC systems. All right. These are a bunch of VNC systems out on the internet, just sitting there with no authentication. Somebody can just totally walk into these systems and take over these systems. Like this one is in Istanbul, not Constantinople. I don't know what the hell that is. It's wrong song. But here we have this system, and I can specifically click on ICS for industrial control systems, and I can gain access to all of these industrial control systems. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We have 152 results on Shodan. Now, let's say hypothetically, an attacker is coming at one of your systems and they see a SCADA ICS system directly connected to the internet. This one's all logged in and everything. What do you think's going through an attacker's head whenever they see like a full system, full logged in access and all of this, right? I want you to think of the psychology of the attacker. At this particular point, the attacker is convinced they got this, right? The attacker is convinced it's game over at this point. They're going to be able to just totally take over this system with little to no effort. But if this was a trap, you can take that inertia of the attacker and you can pivot that inertia against the attacker because they're going to waste time on this. And I'm going to talk about detection time plus reaction time and attack time here in just a little bit. But we can do this in such a way where the attacker gets excited. They believe fundamentally that they have access, like one shot, one kill, we're in, boom, headshot, got this system, SCADA ICS, no authentication. We've now wasted their time. We've created a tripwire that allows us to detect their activity a lot better. And maybe we can tie them up and we can identify a few more techniques and things that they're doing as well. So when we're talking about this, I want you to think of poison and not venom. All right. I want you to think of poison and not venom because they are different things. If you think of poison, poison is usually something that needs to be taken, interacted with, like a poisonous frog or a poisonous spider or a poisonous like leaf or a flower. Venom is something that's injected, right? Venom is something that will strike out and attack you like a snake or a platypus, right? Always make sure that you're on legal footing. And we'll talk about that more here in just a little bit. So when we're talking about cyber deception, we're changing from this, right? We're talking about active defense as an active engaged defense. We're talking about offensive countermeasures using the attacker's inertia against them. And then when we're talking about cyber deception, we're talking about lying to the attacker. Lying to the attacker. And that's where this wonderful page right here is a great example. If we create this really enticing poison where an attacker is super excited that they're going to be able to just gain access to something sensitive in an organization. However, we're now at the point where that's a trap. We're increasing the amount of time that attacker has to spend in trying to identify the legitimate assets in your organization, right? We're obfuscating. Bruce Schneier has a great quote, an awesome quote. He says, security through obscurity is no security at all. And he's right, because a lot of people try to put security through obscurity in their code that they write, right? Trying to use obfuscation. And anytime you think that no one will go through the effort to de-obfuscate the code that you've written, there's some kid in Norway, Finland, or Sweden who's going through that effort right now to de-obfuscate your code. Happens, right? However, when we're talking about security through obscurity from an architectural perspective, creating traps in that environment, it flipping rocks. It is amazing, only if you have proper alerting associated with it. So let's go back to this. An attacker sees one of these systems. It is a honeypot. They try to interact with this system. They try to open doors. They try to mess with generators. They try to change the flow meters and doing adjustments and running values and all those different things for your Rainbird sprinkler system, right? And the more they're trying to mess with those various things, the more you have an opportunity to detect what they're doing if you have proper alerting associated with it. Also, they're wasting their time. And this comes down to a formula that I created called detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes for an attacker to break into your environment. So DT plus RT needs to be less than AT. Stupid basic formula, but it makes sense. The problem with this is you have no control over attack time in most situations for attackers. You just don't. Either you're patched or you're not patched. You either have a service with default creds or you don't. And you're not really aware of how much time it takes for an attacker to try to break into your environment until they actually do try to break into your environment. But with cyber deception, we can manipulate the attack time. Because now, whenever the attacker is spending all of this time on, just as an example, a stupid VNC server that you set up on the inside of your environment, now there's wasting that attack time on an asset that is a trap that has better alerting. So it's reducing your detection time. It's reducing your reaction time. And it's increasing the attacker's attack time. Cyber deception does this for you in a way that absolutely nothing else in computer security does. It's absolutely fantastic. So when we're looking at that attack time, and one of the questions that people will be like, how long is that attack time? Well, honestly, we don't know for most of the time, but we know we can create a delta, right? So if the attacker is interacting with my honeypot for 2 to 3 hours, then I know that they're spending 2 to 3 hours not attacking my critical infrastructure. They're spending 2 to 3 hours spending that time trying to break into that asset that they actually see. Also, cyber deception is not a drop-in replacement for other things in computer security. It isn't. It isn't meant to be like, oh, well, you don't need to have AV anymore. Like, that's not what cyber deception. This is something that bolsters, complements, and feeds other areas of defense. Once again, going back to overused military tropes, there are multiple examples over the years. The biggest ones are in World War II, where cyber deception was heavily used to misdirect the adversaries to defend or attack in places where the other military wasn't. There's lots of examples. Like in World War II, the Allies were driving around in the middle of the night with systems with great big loudspeakers that sounded like huge convoys of equipment and military and personnel moving through an area, because people would call up the Germans and say, hey, they're going through this area. There was inflatable decoys all the time that they were using to make things look like airfields. One of my favorites, I think I might be getting the sides mixed up, but the Germans had an airfield with a bunch of wooden airplanes they put out. And the Allies found out that they were fake wooden airplanes and they bombed that airfield with a bunch of fake wooden bombs. So there's deception on top of deception on that as well. So very, very good things for you to start using in your environment, right? Once again, overly used trope. I get this totally all the time. It's horrible. Almost every single presentation that you see in computer security is like, to quote Sun Tzu, because now I sound like a deep, deep high schooler who has read a basic introductory book on philosophy and Plato and the forms. And we're going to be talking about Michel Foucault. Why are we going to talk about Michel Foucault? Because his name sounds awesome. Foucault. Yeah. All right. So Sun Tzu, right? So I'm going to try to be that kid. Maybe I'll pull out an acoustic guitar and start playing guitar for you all later and some computer security songs like "Don't click on links from strangers." And then you'll take that guitar and you'll just smash the hell out of it. All right. So if we're looking at kind of the operation flow of an attacker, right? Defining target, find, organize, accomplice, build, and acquire these different tools. When you're talking about what the attackers do in their advanced persistent threat lifecycle, we can put deception in each one of these areas, right? If they're trying to build and acquire those tools, they're going to build and acquire those tools based on the recon and the research that they did before they tried to break into your organization. If they're going to get into an environment, they're going to expand their access. We're going to create traps on that. If they're going to try to break in by spear phishing, we're going to create fake users in the environment for them to attempt to try to break into, whether spear phishing or a password spraying attack. There's a number of ways that we can kick this up so we can start obfuscating what it is the attackers see when they initially try to break into that environment. This also ties into a military thing that was created by John Boyd. Have you seen the movie Top Gun? I was going to rip on the new version of Top Gun Maverick because that's kind of the cool thing. You know, I'm old. Oh, the new version of Top Gun is stupid. It was kind of an awesome movie. I'm not going to lie. I still think the new Top Gun movie Maverick was like a fever dream of him falling out of the sky. And while he was like, I'd like to think it's something like Brazil, where he's falling out of the sky, plummeting to his death. And he's thinking about the life he would have had if he hadn't gone like Mach 70 or whatever he was doing at the beginning of the movie. But that's just my dream, I guess. So at any rate, in Top Gun, that's actually a thing. Top Gun is a real school, right? And one of the Top Gun instructors back in the day in the 60s was a guy by the name of John Boyd. And John Boyd was seeing a whole bunch of things that people were trying to sell the military to be better at, like military and things. And he developed an OODA loop. And he basically said, we shouldn't incorporate, train, or buy any technology that doesn't improve OODA, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. Observe, orient, decide, and act. And with that, I want you to look at the area of cyber defense versus cyber offense, right? When an attacker is trying to break into your environment, they have great observations, phenomenal observations. We can do recon for days without sending a single attack packet to your organization. We can do recon on your users. We can do recon on what technology you're using. We can do recon on compromised accounts for credential stuffing. Oh, it's amazing. There's so much observation that an attacker can do as part of their OODA loop in trying to break into your environment. Defenders, we've got Jack. It's bad. I'm just going to be honest with you. Most of our defenses are built around the concept of a brown paper bag over our head. And when someone hits us, we know that we've been attacked. So imagine I've got a bag and I'm sitting there and it's like, boom. Oh God, they hit us. Oh God, spear phishing. Oh no, we're all of a sudden doing a credential stuffing attack. I wish somebody would have told us about this. But our ability to observe is directly related to them actively attacking us right now. And that's not really observation, right? So if you have solid observation, you can orient yourself to the adversary. And that's what attackers can do. They get great observations, they orient themselves based on their recon, and the likelihood of their decisions and their actions being successful are much higher. Whereas defenders, we try to orient ourselves by buying technology. We try to make decisions by buying technology. We try to take actions by having the technology we buy stop the attack for us and soar us to security compliance through the wonderfulness of artificial intelligence, preferably through a single pane of glass. You can't forget that single pane of glass, folks, because you can't have SOAR or AI if it's not managed from a single pane of glass, right? It's a horrible, horrible way to live your life. You shouldn't live your life this way, folks. It's just bad, okay? So when we're doing this, we need to find a way that we can mess with the attacker's ability to observe. And with cyber deception, we can feed them rogue user accounts. We can feed them services. We can feed them white noise that messes up their ability to observe. So now when they're going to orient and try to launch an action, they're going to orient incorrectly. They're going to make incorrect decisions. They're going to take like really insufficient actions and unsuccessful actions. And that creates detection opportunities, because the more actions your adversary takes and trying to gain access to your environment, the more opportunities we have to detect that adversary in your organization. So throughout this OODA loop, we can lie, misdirect, divert, deceive, obfuscate, delay, and disrupt all of their activities. And that's what this class is about. That's what we're trying to do in this class as well. So let's talk about how we can avoid legal trouble. How do we actually do this? No one really agrees 100% on how this is supposed to be done. And it's also weird in this industry how you have like some groups like ISC Squared, whenever they talk about anything dealing with hacking back is bad. And I somewhat agree with that. This isn't a class we're going to spend a lot of time talking about how to hack back, even though later on in this class we get into some things that absolutely could be used for hacking back type activities. But at any rate, one of the things that they talk about constantly is hacking back is illegal. And I kind of agree with that. But the problem I have two problems with that. The first problem I have with that is people try to use the broad umbrella of hacking back and cyber deception and active defense as part of that hacking back umbrella. And that's not true. If you're looking at active defense, that is the big, big, big circle in the Venn diagram. Then we get into cyber deception. Hacking back may be part of that, but it is not the overall encompassing bucket of what we're trying to do here. We sell poison, not venom in this course. And a lot of hacking back is around the idea of creating venom and actively striking against adversaries as much as you possibly can. So keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind when you're looking at these different things, that we're trying to break away from that mold of strictly defining cyber deception as hacking back. The other problem with that is actually the other side of that coin. Hacking back is sexy, like dead sexy. It is. I remember years ago when Paula Zadorian and I were really starting to push this as an idea. It wasn't an idea that we pioneered at all. It was something that we kind of picked up and we continued to run with. But when we started giving presentations at RSA on these things, we got a request for an interview from an author in Wired. And they were like, we want to interview you because you're talking about cyber deception and all these different things. And at the beginning of the interview, the reporter said, so you guys teach hack back? And Paul and I were both like, no, we do not teach hack back. That's not at all what we're covering. And they killed the interview. I said, no, I don't want to do an article on this because people are interested in hacking back. They're not interested in a well thought out, reasoned approach of cyber deception and how to implement it in your organization. We want to have the cool stuff. We want the sexy tech. And they ended the interview just like that. And that sucks, because as long as we're in that mindset of hacking back, not hacking back, and we're trying to create that as the big bucket of everything that we cover in cyber deception, then we're never going to progress. And this class is really designed to try to progress, to try to get you so you can start implementing these things in your organization and you can avoid legal trouble. In fact, I would say 5% of the things you have to run by an attorney in this class. The overwhelming majority of things that we do in this course are all built around stuff that you can implement tomorrow in your organization and improve your computer security on that as well, right? So please keep that in mind. Some of these things are really basic, really simple, and they go a long, long, long way for securing your environment as well. Also, I want you to kind of think about warning banners in terms of use, right? Now, some of those warning banners, like, It's like, did you read the EULA, right? We'll talk about how you can use EULAs to really limit the overall legal like liability that your organization will encounter. In fact, most of the stuff we talk about is already in your existing EULA that you have right now. So let's dive in just a hair. So I love these warning things that you see online. Do not touch. Not only will this kill you, it'll hurt the whole time you are dying. Please be safe. Do not stand, sit, climb, or lean on zoo fences. If you fall, animals could eat you, and that might make them sick. Chef's kiss, right? Danger, entanglement hazard. There's nothing about that picture that makes me think, you know what? I'm going to try to mess around with that PTO shaft on that tractor. Seems like that could be a good time. Yeah, no, we're not talking about that. Now, when we're talking about cyber deception and implementing the cyber deception, I have people periodically that think they understand the law will say things as like, yeah, by the way, I'm creating an idiot straw man in the way that I talk. I apologize, but it works from a pedagogical perspective. But a lot of times when you have people that are arguing against cyber deception, they'll say things like this. Once again, over like enhanced to show texture, right? Well, you can't do cyber deception because it's illegal for you to have lethal traps in your house. And cyber deception's the same thing. Or they'll say, you can't do cyber deception because that's entrapment and entrapment's illegal. Okay, both of those are dumb. No, I hammed it up a little bit, just being honest, right? So let's hit them one at a time, right? Yes, it is illegal for you to create lethal traps in your home. Even in the state of Texas, it's illegal. You can't put landmines on your property. You just can't. You can't put, like these, like bear traps, like bears on your property and trap it, right? You can't do that. You can't, you just can't. I'm sorry. Can't have, what is it? Sharks with freaking laser beams on their head. You can't have that either. None of that is legal. Now, this goes all the way back to the 1800s. And the earliest case precedent that I could find on this was actually dealing with gold miners. Gold miners in places like the state of South Dakota, they would leave their mine in winter because winter is cold and there's lots of snow. So they would leave a shack with all of their tools and then they would create a lethal trap where if somebody opened the door, a shotgun would go off. Why is that illegal? It's illegal for a number of reasons, but the two main reasons are, let's say a kid goes up to that shack and opens the door and gets shot. That's not cool. Another reason why it's illegal is emergency management. Let's say that you have a lethal trap in your home, somebody is having a heart attack or a fire is on your property and the fire department is going and they open up the door and they get shot. Those things are indiscriminate. Now, that is illegal, 100% true, but there is a world of difference between killing someone and getting their IP address when they try to hack into your network. They are not even close to the same thing. Not there at all, right? So please understand they are substantially different things, right? Now, that's one side, right? However, you can actually warn them as well about some of the illegal things they're not illegal things, some of the evil things on your network. Just go through this list. Access checks. How many people out there, just think about this, have a VPN that validates as soon as somebody authenticates the network to make sure that their system's patched and up to date. Their AV definitions are patched and up to date. Think about that. How many people are out there that have that? Patched, up to date? Sure, you can gain access to the network. That is doing access checks. Authentication verification, right? Geolocation. Think about that. In Microsoft Office 365, it does geolocation of where you are to make sure that your user account, if you're not in China, is not in China. All of that stuff can be the same thing that we would run for cyber deception. I can get the build of your workstation when you access the VPN. I can get authentication verification, make sure you are in fact who you say you are. I can go through and do geolocation on somebody when they're trying to access my network as well. All of that can be built in to your cyber deception strategy. And your warning banners don't have to differentiate and get weird because a lot of this stuff is the stuff your organizations are already doing. We're just using that data in a different way. So why are these skills critical? These skills are critical because eventually you will need them, right? Attackers are getting more and more brazen, right? There's very little perceived risk for an attacker trying to break into a network in these days. There just is very little risk at all. We have rules too, right? We have rules, we have laws, they don't. And I'm going to be blunt, this sucks. Computer security would be a lot easier if we didn't have to follow rules. You know, in the book, Mona Lisa Overdrive, Neuromancer, and Count Zero, right? When William Gibson was writing those books, there's this idea of black ice, defenses that could literally kill a hacker trying to break in. We don't have that. It's not a thing that we can do, which, I mean, it sounds cool, but you'd feel bad, right? If you electroshock killed a hacker, I mean, you'd feel a little bad about that, right? So with this in mind, you need to increase that risk for the attackers by following the rules. You get into the idea of broken windows. Now, this is a theory in political science that whenever people enter into a neighborhood or a city where there's lots and lots and lots of broken windows, the perception is that the likelihood of being prosecuted or caught for committing crime is low. So therefore, the propensity for committing crime goes up. That's just law enforcement. By the way, if you want to research it, don't take this as a good thing. It actually got really, really bad. They tried to implement this in New York with really racist effects on the other side. That's a whole nother conversation. But the point basically is when people see the perceived risk for committing a crime is low, they're more likely to commit those crimes, right? So how do we increase that perceived risk for the attacker? You're going to need to figure out what the attacker is actually going after, and you may need to pull information about the attacker. And attackers do, from time to time, go through an attack through like I2P, right? IP Predator, right? Tor, jumping through Haha Man's 7 proxies that they're trying to hide behind all of these proxies. And to be fair, when we're talking about cyber deception and attributional technologies, we will be dealing with how you can deal with these technologies whenever an attacker is trying to break into your environment. So that is coming. We are absolutely going to be discussing these technologies, so you'll know how to deal with those technologies when they hit your environment. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mourning our destiny, leaving our youth and childhood behind. So let's take a walk down an old study that was done. I need to update it, but the percentages haven't changed as near as we've seen. This is a graph. This is a bar graph. You can tell because it's a graph with bars. And this graph with bars, also known as a bar graph, has how organizations detected that they were compromised. How did they find out they were compromised in the first place? All right. So if you're looking at how they identified that they were compromised in the first place, if I go through and I highlight all of the ways that that organization detected they were compromised from external third-party sources, you identify that 68% of organizations that find out that they're breached, they find out they were breached from third-party sources, not their internal security technology, not their SIM, not their AV, not their IDS, not their firewall, external third parties. Now, with this also, kind of like digging into it a little bit, there's one up here that has gone up since this graph came out, and that's third-party disclosure. And what that means is the attacker themselves compromised the organization and disclosed to the compromised organization that they were hacked. In computer security, we have this concept of dwell time, right? We've got this concept of dwell time. How long is an attacker able to dwell on a network before they're actually detected? And in the industry, I've seen people all the time say, well, dwell time has gone down. Great job, everybody. We're getting better at dwell time. And you see people like trying really hard to pat themselves on the back, like difficult to pat ourselves on the back. Hold on, Sparky. Don't pat yourself on the back. Part of the reason why our dwell time has been going down is because of ransomware. And the attackers, once they successfully compromise the environment, almost immediately notifies that environment that they have successfully compromised the environment. They've locked out all of their different systems, and you need to pay them money. So yay us, dwell time's lower, but it's not lower because we got better. It's lower because the attackers are actually telling us that they have successfully broken into the environment. So with that, we're at the top of the hour, folks. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break and we will resume. So 10-minute break. Ready? Go. All right, so let's go through why current strategies are not working. And by the way, if you're at this point in the class and you're like, when does this guy shut up and we start doing hands-on? That's coming. I got to be honest, it's just, I don't shut up really well. It's like, ooh, another white boy with a podcast. But at any rate, let's get into it. Why current strategies are broken. Well, honestly, current strategies are broken because we're all doing the same thing, right? Like if we go back 5-6 years ago and we're like, what would you recommend I do to secure my network? They would say, well, you need to patch strong passwords, anti-malware, firewalls, and proxies. And now they're saying, you know what? I'm just going to fix this slide. I'm going to go back to the slide. Let's just fix this slide right now. Instead of it's next gen, I'm going to do AI. And we're going to put AI because, they got to update that. You have to add in that artificial intelligence. There you go. So now I have just created a whole bunch of technologies. I am now officially an InfoSec thought leader. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, that's me. I called it that we need to have next gen AI firewall, next gen AI anti-malware, because that's it. It's the artificial intelligence that's going to save us in computer security. Spoiler, it's not. All right. So with this, we're still doing the same technologies, right? I mean, artificial intelligence is great at helping us like deal with some forms of complexity and some of the problems that we have encountered in actually dealing with those problems. But when you look at computer security and how it's growing at this exponential, crazy level of just growth, right? So think about where we're at today and all the different services and all the different APIs and these cloud services that are updating and changing constantly and modifying. It's nuts what is out there. And then you throw in mobile devices on top of that. It's crazy. And that's part of the reason why we created The Future Is Comic Books, right? Like we're looking forward and, the future is really going to be the same problems and the things that we're dealing with here. But there's a pattern that's on this slide. And I hope you see it because we're going to delve and we're going to expand and we're going to make this pattern more understandable. So I want you to take a few minutes, think about and write down or type in, what are the top 3 AV companies that are out there? Once again, what are the biggest AV anti-malware companies that you see out there? Maybe CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike done anything interesting in the news lately? I don't know what's happened with them, right? Cylance. I'm kidding. No one uses Cylance anymore. I mean, it's really, really sad. You had a company that was sold to BlackBerry for $1.4 billion. And then it was sold to Arctic Wolf for $140 million. That's a 90% loss in value. That's bad. That's bad. By the way, do you guys know what the difference is between $1 billion and $1 million? Like if I have $1 billion and someone has $1 million, what's the difference between that? The difference between $1 million and $1 billion is $1 billion. If we're rounding up amongst friends, right? That's crazy, right? Now think of IDS and firewall companies. Like what are all the different IDS and firewall companies that you see out there, right? You're going to see Fortinet. You're going to see Palo Alto. You're going to see Cisco. All these different vendors again and again and again. Trust me, getting to a point on this. We're absolutely getting to a point on this. Now I want you to think of the APTs, right? So who's actually trying to hack you, right? Are you worried about China? China? You're worried about China viruses breaking into your environment? Huh? Scared of China? Are you afraid of Russia? Right? Do you think Russia, by the way, we have Vlad here, Vladimir Putin. I mean, this is beautiful. Don't stare at him too long. You'll get pregnant. Yes. Boys too. Don't stare too long. That's amazing. Right? What about the Five Eyes, other nation states? Are you worried about organized crime? Right? Are you worried about insiders? Are you worried about all the above? Right? I'm not judging, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and pretend that only malicious cyber actors are Russia and China, right? Like that's absolute bull. I mean, I pay my taxes. There's 3 things, the 3 most patriotic things that you can do in this world. Number 1, serve your country. Hats off to everyone who has served our country. You have my respect. Most of you. Not all of you. I know a lot of people like everyone. No, I've worked long enough with the military to know that's not 100% true all the time. People in the military know what I'm talking about. But the vast majority of you that serve your country, amazing heroes. Every one of you. Every one of you. Let's just do that. The second thing that you can do for your country is you can vote, right? You can vote. Everyone should get out and vote. The third thing, most patriotic thing that you can do for your country is pay your taxes. And when I pay my taxes, I love paying my taxes because my taxes give me roads, they give me infrastructure, they keep the internet going, they educate my kids. Well, they're all out of school now, but it does all these amazing things. And I hope every time I write that check to the United States government with pride, every single time, I hope that my money is going to the NSA and they're hacking our adversaries. Like, I hope that that's what they're doing because that should be their freaking job, right? Like, if they're not, what am I paying for? Like, I hope my money's going to that. I hope I could earmark that to the NSA to do hot nation state on nation state activities. Ooh, nice, right? But if you're looking at these organizations, whether it's China, Russia, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, whoever it is, Israel, I don't care, Iran, when you're thinking about these companies, when you're thinking about these countries, I've got a question for you. Their capabilities are virtually unlimited when it comes to money. Many of these countries have direct access to your electrons through supply chain attacks. First supply chain attack I dealt with was, I think, in 2006. I was working at Department of Defense, specifically at the NRO NSA stuff for Northrop Grumman. And I was told to go through and find every single Cisco router that had a specific series of serial numbers because they believed that they had a backdoor in them. Right? Makes sense. They're made in China. And it's like, let's just take this thing that's made in one of our adversaries and we're going to throw this right into, we're just going to dump this straight into a highly classified environment. What could possibly go wrong? Russia? Props to Russia. Solar winds. Solar winds. Love you guys. Like, what? Look, I can be frustrated. I can be angry. All of that. They're valid feelings. But at the end of the day, solar winds, deep down, respect. Lots of respect there. You don't have to like it. You don't have to think they're good people or bad people, but you got to respect the game. And game recognizes game. The XZ encryption libraries? They spent years earning the trust of the XZ encryption library developers, and they inserted a backdoor. I think it was the Chinese that were behind that one, not 100% certain. Although it also could have been the NSA, but that's a whole nother series of conversations. But once again, well done. Well done, right? Never-ending exploits and backdoors. Elaborate anonymization of command and control, diplomatic immunity, right? Like, they can hack all the time. It's like, what? Are we going to go over and pull the Russians out of Russia and put them in prison? No. Unless they land in Istanbul, not Constantinople. At that particular point, we may actually have jurisdiction and memo of understandings in those situations. But that's a whole other conversation we're not going to get into, right? They're also highly motivated and conditioned. It's their job. Like, in China, like all of you, we have like, I can see 245 people live on this stream on Zoom. I don't know how many people we have on the YouTubes. By the way, welcome YouTube people. We really appreciate you. Love the fact that you're here. Be sure to get your flame on in the comments section in YouTube because that's where all the best discourse happens on the internet. So you have these people, right, that are highly conditioned. We have 245 here. They're doing their thing. That's awesome. In China, they're literally training thousands of people that woke up that morning and were like, oh God, I hate my job. I got to go to downtown Beijing and I got to learn how to hack for the PLA. Oh, my boss is so awful. He's so crazy. Yeah, no, that's their job. There's thousands of them that are learning that. And they're breaking into your networks right now. But here's the thing. Good testing firms like Black Hills Information Security, Layered Sec, Trusted Sec, Secure Ideas, bypass these defenses on a daily basis. If you know that these boutique pen testing firms, by the way, Amazing, amazing firms, every single one of them. I throw Red Siege in here for sure, right? OpenSec in here for sure. All of them can bypass those technologies. Do you think that when we're talking about the Russians, the Chinese, the NSA, the Five Guys, organized crime, Five Guys, is this an intelligence community or a burger joint, right? The Five Eyes organizations that are out there. Do you think that they have at least the skills of these firms that are listed here? Do you? Think about it. These nation states are at least as capable as the firms that I listed. We're a boutique pen testing firm based out of Sturgis, South Dakota. And we can bypass those technologies. So you better believe the Russians and the Chinese and the NSA have that capability as well. Absolutely. So what do you do? Are you going to believe AV vendors that they can truly detect a nation state level adversary? Are you going to believe your firewall IDS IPS vendor that they're going to be able to detect a nation state level adversary? Because here's the truth in the industry right now today. Dwell time is going down, and the dwell time is going down because the ransomware attackers are telling us we have successfully broken into your network. We're holding your network hostage. The really scary adversaries, they're not going to drop ransomware on your organization. These people right here, they're going to hit your network and they're going to stay on your network as long as they possibly can. They're going to entrench themselves on your network as deep as they possibly can. They're not going to get in. Like, China's not going to break into your system and try to like ransomware you out of $500,000. Russia, times are tight. They may do that. They may do that possibly, but even Russia, I would say right now, they're going to try to dwell and stay on your network as long as they possibly can as well. So let's think about that. What operating systems do you think adversaries use? And this is something we don't think about as much as we should, but we should. What do we think the adversaries are using for their technologies, right? What operating systems? Spend a few moments. Let's think about that, right? They're probably going to be using Windows, Kali, Linux, right? Maybe they're going to roll their own distribution. What are the obfuscation techniques that they're going to use? Are they going to use MSF Venom? Or are they going to be specifying encoders to bypass AV? What are they going to do for persistence? We already talked about SolarWinds, right? Look at the XZ packages. That's crazy, right? They're able to hook in the encryption libraries that are used by almost every single product on the face of the planet in our most sensitive protocols like SSH. Command and control, same thing. Exfiltration, how are they going to get that data out of the network? So if we think about this and we start kind of disassembling, this is going to start giving us the basis for what we need to do to start building our defensive architectures around cyber deception. Because if I want to get attribution, I need to be able to get attribution for Windows and for Linux. If I want to deal with persistence mechanisms, how do I detect those persistence mechanisms? By testing my EDR to make sure that my EDR is functioning. If I'm dealing with advanced command and control, how do I detect a nation state level command and control protocol? And these are all things that we are absolutely going to be discussing in this class as we progress, because you will be exploited. Expect it, right? Anonymous, expect us. Expect adversaries to get into your environment. And we spend far too much time, effort, and money trying to focus on prevention. And prevention is important, right? It is not enough. We need to have detection and response. And deception is part of that detection and response strategy. Most of the current security technologies that you have today in your organization fail against zero-day exploits. And this also includes artificial intelligence, because a lot of artificial intelligence is trained on the model of what a traditional exploit looks like. So when it sees something novel and new, maybe it's not going to classify that as evil because it is something that's new, right? Phishing and social engineering still works, folks. Phishing and social engineering absolutely works. We use it constantly. Advanced malware. for persistence and bypassing endpoint security products. I guarantee you the Russians and the Chinese and the NSA and all the main security testing firms out there have technologies that are specifically designed to bypass your EDR. Supply chain infiltration, we talked about that SolarWinds, we talked about the XZ libraries for compression, and then government backdoors that they literally build into the products that we are using. I mean, on iPhones a while ago, there was a whole bunch of undocumented API calls that showed up. And people were like, where do these different API calls, direct calls to the hardware, where did these come from? No one knew. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that the NSA absolutely knew about those undocumented API calls. Once again, if not, what is my tax dollars being used for, right? We should expect that out there as well. All right, segmentation. We're talking about some active defense. Like, how do you deal with that? You know you're dealing with an advanced adversary. You know you're dealing with the Russians. You know you're dealing with the Chinese. You know you're dealing with the United States and the NSA. What are you going to do to defend against your network? Now, you may ask, like, why am I taking this class from this weird person who's clearly highly caffeinated? I have done hot nation state on nation state level offensive stuff before. So yes, I know what nation state capabilities are. I know what nation states can do. I know what nation states are afraid of because I have done that. I still have, well, for now, I still have an active clearance with the United States government. Okay. So I'm going to talk about, from my perspective, what are the things that scare me? Okay. If I'm hired to break into a nation state level adversary, what are the things that are going to terrify me? One of the first things that absolutely terrifies me is segmentation. This sounds crazy, but you should be segmenting your network. You should be breaking your network up into separate individual network segments to stop the lateral movement that an attacker can do in your environment. Because we have attacks like pass the hash attacks. These are what we call forever days. These are vulnerabilities that have existed for an extended period of time. They will continue to exist for an extended period of time. We've been using them since 1997. Yes, this is about the time that Prince was sitting down and penning the song, Gonna Party Like It's 1999. 1997. Pass the hash has worked. That's nuts. I can explain why maybe a little bit later, but trust me, it still works today. Pass the ticket security access token impersonations, right? If we're going after, once I gain access to a user account, I have their Kerberos token. And now I can use that user. I can play them like a puppet and pull the strings of that user and make them whatever they can do, I can do, right? We absolutely have had that capability for a long, long, long time. And one of the things I tell almost every class that I teach is getting compromised is acceptable. I know that sounds weird. I know that sounds crazy, but it's acceptable in the fact that it's like death and taxes, right? These are bad things that are going to happen to you. You're going to die. You're not going to like it. You're going to try to push it off as long as you possibly can. But at some point, you're going to accept the fact that you are going to die. You're going to be compromised. Learn to accept that as a true fact. Because once you get past that, once you start believing that, once you know that you will be compromised, it is going to happen. Now you can start developing your security support structures the way you should have done it all the time. Because what is not acceptable is for an attacker to persist for months. What is not acceptable is for an attacker to pivot from one compromised system and take over the rest of the environment in minutes. We can do this. And I kind of broke down some of the things from the MITRE Engage framework. Isolation. Configure devices, systems, and networks to contain activity and data in order to promote inspection or prevent expanding and engagement beyond the desired limits. Network diversity. Use a diverse set of devices on network to establish legitimacy for decoy networks. This is getting into honeypots. Network manipulation. Make changes to a network properties that function to achieve a desired effect. I could talk about this now. I think I'm past this why I should care about not hiring it. But years and years and years ago, I was doing some work with early days of Facebook. And one of the things the engineers did at Facebook that was beautiful is they created kind of the equivalent of the upside down internet, even though it predated Stranger Things. But you basically, once a system was compromised, they could pivot that system onto an infected VLAN where it replicated the production network. The attacker never knew they were no longer on a production network. And of course, the people at Facebook could monitor and watch that attacker for an extended period of time. It became a hacker ant farm. Now, that is crazy. That is a lot of work to be able to set up and do something like that, but it shows you where you can actually go with some of these technologies, what you can actually do to advance these technologies in your organization. And once again, this is all talked about in MITRE. So you don't have to say it's just John Strand says. You can say MITRE, an organization with some level of authority, says these are things we should be implementing in our organizations as well. So if we're looking at that exploit and we're trying to stop that exploit, and this is a concept I talk about in the Intro to Security class as well, just your ordinary average exploit. I simply spearfish and gain access to a system. From that one system, I can pivot and I can use PS exec. I can pivot and I can do pass the token. I can pivot and I can do R desktop. I can pivot and I can do pass the hash. And I can quickly extend that access from one system to multiple other computer systems on that network and take over the domain. And I'm using protocols, by the way, that are actively used by Active Directory. I'm not using an exploit to pivot. PS exec built into Windows System. Pass the token built into Active Directory. R desktop built into tons of systems. Pass the hash part of Windows since 1997. So we can shut that down. We can kill that lateral movement. And one of the ways that we can do this is with firewalls. We treat the internal network as hostile because it is. Set your internal system firewalls at the same level they would be at a coffee shop. Once again, delicious coffee. You'd never do me wrong, coffee. All right. So when you go to a coffee shop, you sit down, you turn on your computer system. As soon as it sees that network, it's like, whoa, 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 this is a public network, and it throws its firewalls up, right? All inbound traffic is blocked, and if you can, you generate an alert on it. You can also create firewalls where you're segmenting out the business units and your organizational units. We're going to talk about this after the lab because I decided we're going to do a lab right now because labs are awesome. So we're going to do one for this. And many of the AV products that you have today have built-in firewalls. You don't have to use the NetSH ADV firewall that's built into a Windows computer system, which is a horrible firewall. It's sadistic if you use it, but it works. We can also use private VLANs as well. So let's go ahead and let's get into our first lab of the day. And I'm just throwing this lab out there. We're going to do this lab because I want to do this lab. The lab is actually under Intro to Security, and we're going to do the host firewalls and nmap lab. Okay. Host firewalls and nmap. So I'm going to show you what your system looks like with and without your firewall. And we're going to talk through how an attacker, once they gain access to an individual system, can do something like a pass the hash attack. Now, why is this lab considered an active defense? It's considered an active defense because it requires you to segment your network. It requires you to understand how your network is segmented, and it requires you to create rules on your host-based firewalls that allow the systems to be talked to from servers, like domain controllers and backup servers. But it does not allow your workstations to talk to each other. Lateral movement is really heavily predicated on workstation to workstation communication, and we want to shut that down. And that's what this lab is going to show you. It's going to show you what your system looks like from an attacker's perspective post-exploitation, how they can move laterally in your environment easily once they gain access to one system and moving around. So this is the lab we're going to do, and it's going to take us up to and through the break, and then I'm going to walk through this lab slowly for everybody. If you've never, ever done any classes with me ever before, we set it up. This is the class you're going to do, or sorry, the lab you're going to do in this class. Then we're going to do it. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to walk through it slowly with everybody so they can see what the impact of that lab actually is out there as well. All right, so once again, the VM is now in the cloud. You're going to use MetaCTF. You're going to set up your credits. You're going to get logged in. And when you're done, everything exists in the cloud right here. And if we can get that link shared with our YouTube students, that would be super awesome as well. So we're going to be running it through here. All right, everybody, get rolling. if you need anything, be sure to use the tech support channel in Discord. And this will take us up to and through the break. So we will resume at 10 after the hour, everybody. We will resume at 10 after the hour. You know who's back? We're back. That's who. All right, are we ready to do this lab? Let's go through this together. Let's roll. All right, so we're going to do this host firewalls and nmap lab. And it looked like I was missing one. I got it right here. Cool. Let me go out of. I got too many windows. I got too many windows. All right. All right. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're back. Let's do this. All right. So let's go through this lab step by step with the fancy schmancy copy and paste techniques. So with this, I have my my command prompt. I have my Kali box open. And while we're waiting on this, I'm going to make my Kali box bigger because we spend a lot of time in the Kali box. I'm just going to change my settings. We're going to change this appearance. We're going to change that from 10-point font. Takes a few seconds for it to actually rotate into something larger. We're going to set that font to 18, and I'm going to make it bold, crisp, cool, and refreshing, just like the Rocky Mountains it comes from. All right, we're going to make that font bigger. Oh, yes, look at that. That's good. And then I'm going to make sure I've got a PowerShell prompt up and running because I will be using that as well. So the first thing I need is I need my IP address for my Windows computer system. So I am going to type into my command prompt here. We're going to type in the command ipconfig. There we go. And there's my IP address. I'm just going to set that right off over here, off to the side, because I'm going to need that here in a second. But my IP address is 10.10.214.77. Your IP address will be different, just like the instructions say here. And then we're going to open up the Kali prompt, which I have already started. Once again, doing the Julia Childs thing. Oh, look, the cake is done. Look, we already have Kali running. We already have it set up and we're ready to go. So we've got Kali on the taskbar, Kali on the desktop, Kali in the supper time. And once we are into our Kali command prompt over here, I'm going to pull this in like that. And then I am going to run the command sudo su space minus. What is that? I'm switching user and doing something. And the switching user and doing something that I'm doing is switching user, which is implied to root. It's a weird thing. Basically, when you run your command like this, if it asks for a password, which it's totally not going to do here, it'll ask for your password, not root's password. If you'd like to know more about how Linux works and how you can use Linux and the fun things you can do, hacking and also detecting malware on a Linux system, check out the Intro to SOC Core Skills class online. Then I'm going to nmap my Windows system. We're going to network map that Windows system. So I do nmap. I'm going to put in 10.10.214.77, which just so happens to be the IP address of my Windows computer system. And we're going to see what ports are open. Now, there are going to be ports that you cannot close on your Windows computer system. We'll talk about that here in just a couple of seconds. But there are ports on this Windows system that really should be closed. Like it's bad, y'all. All right. You can see that we have RPC, SSN, and Microsoft Data Services. Those three ports allow me to communicate from Windows to Windows systems. I can use this over, we're going to use RPC on port 445 with a tool called psexec. Why is this bad and what exactly are we trying to get at? We're going to show you that when that firewall is down, like let's say in a corporate environment and things like that, it allows lateral movement. It allows an attacker to pivot from one system very quickly and easily to another computer system. We also have 3389 and 5357. Those are required for the lab to work because we're running Guacamole, which allows us to remotely access said Windows computer system. So let's keep going with the labs, following the instructions. A little copy and paste. Now I'm going to turn on that firewall and we're going to rerun our we're going to rerun our port scan on that system. So now we're going to turn on the firewall. It's on. We know it's on because it said okay. All right. And now we're going to rerun our nmap. Now, when we rerun the nmap, you're still going to see those two ports open, but you're not going to see the RPC and the SSN ports open on the Windows computer system. So I want to show you what that looks like and why that's bad. Okay. We're going to go through that in a little bit more detail, just continuing on down the lab. All right. So I'm going to turn off my firewall again. We're going to go back into an insecure state. There we go. We're going to right click on this command and we're going to choose copy. And then we're going to go back and we are going to paste it and we're going to turn that firewall off, right? Because now it's going to open up those Microsoft ports that we can actually connect to. And we're going to show you how those connections actually look and how those connections actually work. We're also going to disable the AV on this system. Now, for the record, there were some people that said that there was a typo in this command. There is not. Somebody, I can't remember who, said that there needed to be set space. No. This command works as intended. The biggest problem that we saw on this command was people weren't running it in PowerShell. Anytime you see PS, that means you're running in your PowerShell prompt on that. So you can see those ports are back open. I open up my PowerShell prompt, paste in the command, paste in the command. Okay. So why you listen to me, I honestly don't know, chat. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to recopy. We're going to repaste. Why you guys are taking a class from someone who doesn't know how to copy and paste? I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know at all. There we go. Hit enter. It's going to come back and it worked just fine. It worked. Worked. Now, if I add a space, there were people like, oh, there needs to be a space there, man. There needs to be a space. If I do that, just no, doesn't work. Doesn't work. The other place that it didn't work is we had some students that were trying to run it on the Windows command prompt. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody that had a problem and took a screenshot, because somebody put in a screenshot of this in the Windows command prompt and we were getting an error. That helps us troubleshoot. Don't just say, hey, it didn't work. That doesn't tell us anything. It just, we need those screenshots, and a lot of love to all the people that gave us screenshots. That's awesome. All right. So now I've got the AV disabled. I've got the firewalls disabled. We're going to do some additional things. I'm going to set this password to something stupid. All right. Just so you know, if you're like, well, that's an easy password and anybody could memorize that password. Once again, I'm talking specifically to the YouTube comments. Stick with me. What if the password is something super long? What if it was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, even though the sound of it was somewhat quite atrocious? Exclamation point one. Would the lab work or would it fail? Stay tuned. I'm going to show you some cool stuff here in just a second, but I'm going to take this stupid password and we're going to use the stupid password first. So I'm going to set that password to be password of 1234. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door. Once again, I've got my IP address on that system. I know having a middle-aged white dude sing rap is like the most cringe-worthy inducing thing on the face of the planet. I understand that. I get it. I do. I really, really do. It's not good. It's not good. I was never meant to rap. All right. So I'm going to put my IP address over there. I'm going to open up my command prompt over here because we are now going to exploit said system with running MSF console -Q. MSF console -Q. That means quiet. And we're going to start up Metasploit. So what are we going to show? We're going to show you that if the firewall is down, it becomes exceedingly easy for an attacker to be able to gain access to a Windows computer system. In fact, I am going to show you that it doesn't matter what that password is, because some of you are going to say, yeah, well, hey, it's a really stupid, easy password. So anybody could crack it with a password of password 1234. Once again, that's not quite what I'm demonstrating here, but we're also going to show that if I have a token, if I have a password hash from the system I have exploited, that it can also utilize that password hash, regardless of what the password is, to be able to gain access to those computer systems. So when your systems are running in an Active Directory environment, their shields are down, firewalls down, everybody can move lateral, dogs and cats are living together. People are making love in the corner because this end times, y'all. It's just bad in an Active Directory environment. But when you're in a coffee shop, all of a sudden those firewalls are up. Why is that more secure than it is at work? And who cares? Well, we're going to show you why we care about that, because we care a lot. Yeah, that's right. That's right. we're gonna be quoting 80s bands here. What band did I just reference? All right. We've got the IF config for our Kali system. I can just start up another Kali terminal. Just start up another Kali terminal. Actually, you can paste that right in to Metasploit. And if it doesn't know what that command is, it'll automatically throw it to the operating system. So my IP address on my Linux system is 10.10.206.145. So I got that up there. All right, let's keep going. We're going to set the R host. We're going to use exploit SMB PS exec. Like so. Like that. Now it's going to use that exploit. Don't have a full class associated with Metasploit. God, I need to get a Metasploit class set up and ready to go. It's going to default to the payload of Windows, Meterpreter, reverse TCP, right? So now we have to set a few more options to exploit that computer system appropriately. So we're going to set the R host, the remote host is going to be our Windows system. I'm going to paste that in. It's going to be 10.10.214.77, right? It's going to make that the Windows computer system. Next, we're going to set the L host to be the Linux host. L host means local host or the listening host. It's not Linux host, but we're going to call it Linux host for this lab just because that's fun. We're going to set the L host to be our Linux IP, which is right here, 10.10.206.145. There we go. Got it set up as our Linux IP address. We're going to set the SMB user to be administrator, right? We're going to copy that in, and we're going to paste it here like that. And then we're going to use that crappy password. I'm sure somebody has already commented on this is lab because that password is lame. You are so wrong. Stick with me, vile internet commenter, because I've got a special treat for you. I got a special treat for you. It's coming up, so stay tuned. And I know you're like, no, you don't have anything to teach me. I do. And I was missing the exploit command. I added it in. This is what happened the last time I taught this class. I added in all of this stuff at the end of the lab on the fly, and I forgot the exploit command on this system. So now we're going to attempt to exploit that Windows computer system, and we hope it works. Please, demo gods and the lords of Bill Gates, not the Jeffrey Epstein Bill Gates, but the Bill Gates that tried to do the demo with the universal plug and play. And it worked. There we go. We now have a Meterpreter session on this system. So there was much rejoicing. We were happy. You guys are excited about this because some of you have never seen this before, but for many of you, this is your first exploit. Welcome to the world of exploitation. So we're going to do some stuff a little bit different. I'm going to show you that whole password, that lame password of 1234 and how we can kick this up like 95 notches. Because once again, justifiably, somebody out there, not on our fine Discord server, but probably on the YouTubes is complaining about that particular password of password 1234. But what if the password wasn't a password of 1234? What if the password was something else? Like what if I took that password and I typed this in for a password? Look at this, look at this. All right, that looks like a good password. Oh, wait, let's add some special characters in there. There we go. Is that what we would call a strong password? Right? I'm going to set my password to my administrator account to whatever that nightmare actually is on that, right? So we have that command has completed successfully. All right. So now I've changed the administrator password. And you know what? I don't even have to type that in at all because I can do this. So if I run the command #dump, it dumps the password hashes off of the system that I've exploited. So say the hacker comes in blindly, they get malware running on that system. They don't know your password. They don't know your password. They don't know my password. They don't know Ryan's password. They don't know Zach's password. They don't know anybody's password. The only thing they have is the password hashes. All right. So you can see we got the password hash for the administrator account. We have the password for default account, guest account, WGAU, whatever, and then also the whitelist account as well. So if we have those password hashes. I don't even know what the password is. I wrote up a whole bunch of gibberish on the outside. It's a stupid password. It's a lame password. What's going to happen if an attacker gains access to that environment and there is no firewalls enabled on that system? None whatsoever. So I can do exit minus Y. I'm going to exit my interpreter session and we're going to change things. We're going to change the SMB pass. Instead of the password of password 1234, we're going to set up the password for the administrator account. The first half is the landman password, which really weirdly enough is actually not the administrator password in landman. I'll explain that here in a second. And then there's a colon, and then there is the NT password hash for that system. The first one, the AADB34, that's a blank password. By default, most Windows systems don't store the the landman password hash anymore. It's just blank. And then I have the NT password hash. So if I gain access to a system and I am on that computer and I gain access to some password hash on that particular computer system, I can still exploit that particular computer system without knowing what the password actually is. Because Windows treats the password hash as though it is the real password. Bam, still in. So our malware still works. So whenever an attacker gains access to one of your systems inside of your environment and they try to move laterally, they don't have to know what the password hashes are. They don't have to know what the passwords are. They can use password hashes or they can use domain tokens to authenticate to every other workstation as either the authenticated user or for the password hashes that they're able to get off of that workstation, right? So if I'm a defender, and I do exit minus Y, and then I turn on that firewall on that system, right? I turn that firewall on like that. As soon as that attacker gains access to a computer system and they try to pivot off of that computer system, it fails. It's going to time out here in just a second. So when we're talking about an active defense, we're talking about an engaged defense in an organization. This is incredibly powerful because now the attacker doesn't know where they're going to pivot. They'll be forced to pivot directly to servers, which, believe it or not, is a good thing. It's good if we can restrict that movement to well-defined pathways that we can have better approaches for defense and better monitoring. You do not, excuse me, want an attacker to move laterally to every other workstation. Your systems should be just as secure inside of your environment as they are in a coffee shop. All right. Speaking of coffee, let's talk about it. Editors, this is not something we want to make into the on-demand version. I would love to answer the questions for the people in chat. Kind of a long lab, kind of getting us started, getting our feet underneath us. We're starting to learn stuff, but this has nothing to do with deception, but it has everything to do with active defense. All right. While you all are talking, it's a really good idea, or while you're chatting with me, this lab is totally foobarred. Not the lab, but the environment, because we've changed that password. Let me show you something. If you try to refresh this session, it's going to die. And this happened to some of you a few moments ago. Like, let's say I close the tab and I try to reconnect right here. You're going to get a guacamole error. The reason why you're getting a guacamole error is because the administrator password has been changed and it's trying to authenticate. So what you need to do is you need to destroy the lab and restart it. In fact, you should do that at the end of everything that you do on that as well. All right. So let's see what we've got. Any questions on that? I don't think we have. If you were cracking those hashes, you would need the landman and the pass hash for the pass hash. Actually, you need both of them. You need the landman and the NT hash. The landman colon, and then the next one is not the pass hash. That's the NT hash. You need both of them for any pass the hash attack that you would use, Jake. Yep. Good question. Which service should be disabled to prevent this? This isn't a matter of services. You actually, Anna, cannot disable like the RPC services on a Windows. I mean, you can, bad things happen to your Windows system. It's just like F you, and it rolls over and it dies a painful death. But what we're doing with that firewall is we're restricting access to those services and those ports so that other workstations can't gain access to it as well. Could Microsoft stop past the hash attacks? They could, if they completely change their entire authentication scheme for Landman, NetNTLM, and NetNTLM v2. They would have to change their entire authentication scheme, which would break literally every single Windows deployment on the face of the planet. So they're not going to on that as well. Is it true that having a Windows password of over 15 helps? It helps due to how the Windows password is stored. Yes and no, the letter G. This past the hash attack, that password I created was greater than 15 characters. You're specifically talking about LANman password hashes. LANman password hashes take your password up to 14 characters, split it into two 7-character strings, stores them separately after converting them to uppercase. If you get over 14 characters, it no longer stores the LANman password hash, and you get the hash of padding. But the way it is today, it's like that anyway. It's fine. It's perfectly cool. All right. Does Linux prevent pass the hash? Yes, you cannot do a pass the hash attack on a Linux system. My watch just started working. I just got Andy's thing right here. Oh, Andy just said a reminder. Remember, Andy, I said editors. This is a direct conversation with my students. After the labs, I like to do that. So I'll clearly define that for the editors so they know that I'm talking to you all. But good point. Thanks for keeping me honest, though. It's a good point. Now I got other people calling me. All right. So yeah, you can't do pass the hash with SSH. If you're using Active Directory authentication in Linux, you can, because it's going to be using a domain token. And if you can intercept that domain, that Kerberos pre-auth authentication token, you can then use, like, it's not pass the hash, but it's basically token authentication with that as well. All right. So let's go ahead and let's keep going. Restart my lab. Cool. All right, let me bring up those slides and we're going to keep going with the slides. So let's talk about what we just did. What we just did is if a single system is compromised in an environment, at that particular point, whenever an attacker pivots off of that computer system and they try to hit any of the additional Windows computer systems in the environment, that is going to fail. It is going to fail because PS exec is blocked. It's going to fail because pass the token is blocked. It's going to fail because our desktop is blocked, and it's going to fail because pass the hash attacks are blocked as well. All right. That's going to shut that down. So it severely limits what are the lateral movement opportunities that an attacker has post exploitation in an environment. And really, this kind of goes back to detecting an insider, right? If we want to look at how do we detect an insider in our environment, really, if you can't detect an insider at that particular point, you don't have a good security infrastructure or a good security architecture at all. And I know that this is harsh because detecting insiders are very difficult. But what we just found out with the lab that we went through is that if an attacker gains access to a single workstation in many environments, it's an insider. That account that I have compromised and I'm using as a puppet is now a system that is just like an insider. That user account that I am controlling through the purposes of evil is as dangerous as Edward Snowden sitting on the inside of your network and stealing data at that particular point. So how do you detect an attacker that's trying to move around laterally in an environment? How do you detect a user that is accessing thousands of files or trying to pivot and access hundreds of systems, right? When we're looking at the targeted attacks of the future, they're going to be using cloud services. They're going to be using remote desktop. They're going to be using the built-in services, Kaseya, any type of RMM. They're going to be using those tools against us. So we need to be ready to detect and react to those particular attacks that are happening. So how do we actually go about dealing with this? One of the things we can do is we can start doing threat emulation, where we start testing what are the different techniques that our EDR can detect. Very similar to trying to establish firewall rule sets inside of your environment, threat emulation requires you to actively get involved with your organization to understand which security products are working, which ones are not, and where are the gaps in the security support structure in our environment. How do we go about doing that, right? And there's a ton of free tools that allow us to do this in such a way that we do not have to go and buy a commercial third-party tool to be able to do that. One of these tools is a commercial tool called, or sorry, open source tool called Caldera. Caldera is a tool that is built by MITRE that ties into the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix. It's a fantastic tool. The tool we're going to be using in a lab here in just a few moments is Atomic Red Team. We're going to use Bluespawn, and we're going to use a step-by-step, how do we do threat emulation to see what our security technology can detect and what it cannot detect. This is an active defense because you are actively testing and evaluating your architecture in your environment. And the cool thing about Atomic Red Team is it gives you a breakdown of what techniques worked, which ones didn't, and it'll give you a full write-up of everything that that specific technique actually does as well. Other thing we can do is write DTEX and constantly tune it. At Black Hills Information Security and our security operations center, we have 4 full-time detection engineers that are working to develop and tune our DTEX. Now, many people ask, well, how do I get started writing DTEX? How do I tune these things? Sigma is a great place. If you don't have an actual SIM like Splunk or Elastic or Microsoft Sentinel where you can practice with, Sigma is great because you can write DTEX in Sigma and you can convert them through their tool automatically into Elastic detects, into ArcSight detects, into Splunk detects, and so on. Another tool that you can look at for doing adversarial emulation is a tool called Bloodhound. We talked about this earlier. A bunch of people brought it up, that lateral movement. If I can move laterally, I have the ability to escalate my privileges in Active Directory and become a domain administrator. If we're locking down any and all communication between workstations, a whole bunch of these different types of connections you see in the little circles are broken to me as an adversary. I cannot pivot and go to workstation to workstation to workstation to workstation to test and see what my permissions are on that workstation. This is a very quick and easy tool that you can use to be able to test that pathway from a standard user all the way up to an Active Directory domain administrator. But you have to be careful. When you're doing threat emulation, as I said, this is an active defense approach. It is not plug and play. It is not just testing a tool and saying, yep, once it works. You're going to be constantly testing and evaluating and making sure that your security support structure works. At BHIS in our SOC, every single day, we do threat emulation to test and verify all of our DTECs are firing the way that our DTECs are supposed to fire, because we do not trust our security support structure to work the way that we expect it to. And I know that that's not a really good selling point. You know, usually when you're trying to sell a product, it's like, our product is fine. We have 0 false positive guarantee and 0 negatives. You know, buy our product. Here, can we interest you in this wonderful tincture? It'll fix your hunchback. What you have to be careful of is you have to be careful of any of your DTECs that you write being too specific to the tool. Right? We don't want to write a signature for the very specific path on how Atomic Red Team works. We need to look at what Atomic Red Team did and write a signature that's applicable regardless of where it exploits and if there's any type of obfuscation for that exploit running as well. Once again, this is active. This is something that's continuous. This is a huge part of what my security operations center team does for BHIS customers. And yes, it is hard work. It is hard, continuous, active work that we are working with all the time. Now, with adversarial emulation, there are commercial tools that we have like Attack IQ, XM Cyber, and also Scythe. You can look at those products. I recommend working with the open source products first and then circling back and trying the commercial tools. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get caught. We're trying to create a gap analysis of what is working in our environment and what is not working in our environment. This is something that is absolutely critical because many managers, CIOs, CTOs, and CISOs look at computer security as just this massive hole in which they throw money, like a boat. You know, a boat is a hole in the water in which you throw money into. That's how people look at computer security. Whereas if you're doing adversarial emulation, you can go through and you can start testing your security support structure. You can find a gap analysis and you can give quantifiable holes and the budget necessary to close those holes in your environment. And these are the things that management absolutely loves. And here's another chart showing the exact same thing, but in a wider format. So we need to move away from can we be hacked, and we instead need to move into what can we actually detect. And with MITRE, we finally have a framework that we can do this with. And things like Atomic Red Team allow us to do this type of testing and evaluation. So when we're going to go through, the next lab that we're going to run is the Bluespawn lab. All right. So we're going to go to Bluespawn. Now, Bluespawn is a mock EDR. It is not a full EDR AV product. It is a free open source research project by a university that actually is pretty solid. It's pretty neat. But it's meant to be a stand-in for what you should be doing with your EDR at work. So you're going to be running this particular tool and you're going to disable your AV again. Once again, that's fine. And then you're going to open up a command prompt on your system. And if you have trouble opening up a command prompt, there's a number of ways to do it, but at any rate, you have those here. And then you're going to go into running the Bluespawn client. We're going to set it to monitor cursory. That means it's not going to actively block an attack. It's going to just alert. This is alerting non-blocking mode for many of your AV products. You can set them to run the exact same way on this as well. So we scroll down, we're going to start it up. Then we're going to open up a PowerShell prompt. We're going to download and install Atomic Red Team from scratch. I want to show you how easy it is to get a detection engineering environment up and running very, very, very quickly. You're going to CD into Atomic Red Team. You're going to install the PowerShell module YAML. You're going to invoke the Atomic Red Team, and then you're going to test individual techniques and jump back over into your Bluespawn, and you're going to see if it has any detections for the things that you are running in your system. Then you're going to clean up when you're done. Now, if you have more time, you can keep Bluespawn running and you can jump back and you can exploit using AppLocker or Sysmon or the lab we just did with nmap. You can re-exploit your system and you can run a keystroke logger. You can try to dump. You can do some persistence registry keys. You can try to get system and you can see if Bluespawn detects any of those techniques. This lab is going to take us up to and through the next break. So we will resume again at 10 after, and I will do the walkthrough. And to close out class today, folks, I am going to do a Ask Me Anything as I do at the end of all of my courses. So with that, let's get rolling, and I will see you at 10 after. That's break and lab. All right, let's do this lab. Let's do this lab. All right. So once again, the reason why this is in the active defense portion of this class is we're getting into the point where we're testing and evaluating whether or not our security tools work the way that we expect our security tools to work. And once again, this is something that's sorely missing in most organizations that we're dealing with today. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So the first thing is from an administrator PowerShell prompt. Once again, we're going to set off we're going to disable AV from the system. Let me connect via the browser. This is where I hope I destroyed and recreate. Okay, I did. Awesome. Because I make that same mistake. I forget to destroy and recreate, and then I get the red angry guacamole error, and it's like, oh, geez. We're going to go ahead and put that in an insecure state with the firewall down. I'm going to open up an administrator PowerShell prompt like that. I'm going to paste in to disable the antivirus on this system. Once again, we're not using the built-in antivirus. We're basically checking to see if something like Bluespawn or any AV can actually detect these different things. Next, we're going to open up a command prompt. So we're going to go ahead and open up a straight up command prompt on this system. We just do that from here. So again, if it's PS, it's PowerShell, and we've got a standard command prompt. Got that ready to go. And we are going to CD into intro labs, like the instructions say, copy and paste it in there. There we go. And then we're going to start Bluespawn here. There we go. Copy. Now, we had some people that were talking about copying and pasting. Sometimes Control C doesn't work. I don't know why. Control C, Control V doesn't work. The way that I found works the best is right click copy, right click paste. Why? No idea. No idea. There we go. But right click paste works just fine. Now we have Bluespawn up and running. Now the next step, we got to open up a PowerShell command prompt. And I'm just going to open it from the bottom. There's a bunch of ways to open a PowerShell command prompt, but that's the easiest way for me. We're going to CD into the top level directory of the system. And then we are going to install Atomic Red Team from scratch. This is basically where it's going to reach out to the internet, because this gen is the internet. And we're going to paste that in here, and it's going to automatically download and install the Atomic Red Team on our system for us. And it's also going to install a really cool tool that's created by, well, not created, but maintained by Carrie Roberts, one of the anti-siphon instructors, that invokes the Atomic Red Team. So we can invoke individual atomics. We can invoke multiple of them out there as well. So there we go. Let's see. It takes a little bit for it to actually download and get that set up. There we go. It's complete. Feeling good. Feeling good. We're going to CD into the evoke atomics directory. And this has all the modules to actually invoke them. Same instructions you would run on any system. We're going to install the PowerShell YAML module. Yet another markup language, because God knows we need more markup languages. It's like people got way too excited about XML. We're going to go ahead and do yes to all. Just let it run. There we go. Next, we are going to import the invoke atomic red team module. That loads up the code for us to start doing individual testing. Paste that in. Now we're ready to start testing. Let's do it. I'm going to let me set this up a little bit better. I'm going to set this guy up over here. We're going to set this one up over here. So I can pull that off to the side a little bit more. There we go. Let me compress this one just a hair. On a real system, you can just have them snap next to each other, which is pretty solid. I don't need that much space. So let's go ahead and pull this one. So now we're going to do this direct stimulus and response type testing to make sure that our tool is working. Now, remember, we're not running our full antivirus. We're running in an alerting non-blocking mode, which means it's going to tell us if it detects something, and it's going to tell us if it actually has matched detects, and it would have stopped it. And I'm going to explain some of the different nomenclature that Bluespawn is kicking out, because we see that in commercial EDRs. So you'd want to create an exception where it's going to be alerting non-blocking. Otherwise, what most EDRs are going to do is just kill all PowerShell execution. And that's not a valid test, right? Like if it kills all PowerShell execution, it's automatically going to stop Atomic Red Team, all of Atomic Red Team. But Atomic Red Team's PowerShell is just an execution harness for doing a bunch of post-exploitation techniques. So we want that to actually execute on this system. We really, really, really do. But we want the AV to tell us if it would have detected an attack or not. So we're going to invoke individual atomics on this system. There we go. And we're going to see if Bluespawn detects it. There we go. It did. It got it triggered as 1004 when logon helper. It got 8 detects. So I know that Atomic Red Team, when it tested this, that Bluespawn had a corresponding detect. So I have some coverage in that specific area. And that's just awesome. Let's try another one and see how well it works. Because remember, we're trying to identify gaps in coverage in our stand-in EDR. So I'm going to run this one next, see if it detects it. Java update, not today, Satan. There we go. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, let's look at the differences between these two. On the top one, it detected a technique and it got detects. That means a very specific signature string was matched in the attack methodology that was done. And the one down below, it said modifying existing service, which is exactly what this technique does right here. It says modify service to run arbitrary binary. It was able to detect that a service was modified, but there were no explicit detects. What the hell does this mean? In your antivirus universe, right? You have very specific detects that have very specific strings that match a rule that generate a critical alert. There's a whole bunch of alerts that what you call mid-level detections, where it detected something, but it didn't match a specific string. So it would be like a medium level alert. Unfortunately, in many environments, a medium level alert where it detects the service fired, but it doesn't match a specific string would never reach the analyst's ticketing queue in the SOC. So yes, kind of had a detect, but it didn't explicitly detect this specific technique. That's good to know. Now, the next one is, let's go through and run that one. Let's see what it does. Whoop, there, it nailed it. It actually got the registry key. So it nailed registry key modifications. And we've got very strong detects, right? We're seeing that registry is being modified. We're seeing that the registry is being modified in such a way where it's invoking command line parameters. That is a persistence technique. We got that one covered. Let's go ahead and try another one. Oh, nice. Nailed it. Nailed it. All right. So if we're looking at our gap analysis, we have 3 detects we feel really comfortable about, and we have one detect that's kind of not there yet, right? So we've got a little bit of detection engineering that we need to do. And as you can see, my system is freaking out. VB startup is now configured to run when you log on. PowerShell is configured to run when you log on. That's bad, right? That's really not healthy. All right, so let's kind of take this up a couple of notches, a little bit more, and let's try to get some level of exploitation on this system. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. We're going to do become root. I'm going to run MSF console quiet, and we are going to do a quick back and forth where we are going to try to run some of the stuff we did in the Metasploit lab, not Metasploit, well, we used Metasploit, but the nmap lab, where we created an administrator password of password 1234. And then I'm just going to walk through the steps to exploit that system again from this particular lab. So we're going to run net user administrator. And I think I can kill this. There we go. Let's open up another command prompt. Right click, run as administrator. And I'm going to change the password on this system to be password 1234. So we're going to follow these directions here. So I'm going to copy this, change that administrator password. I'm going to make sure that my firewall is off, right? We're going to make sure that firewall is disabled, because what we're doing is we're going to exercise our EDR product to make sure that it can detect certain types of attacks. The whole goal of what I'm doing is manual testing and evaluation. Let's say we have something we want to test. We do not have an atomic red team for it, and we're going to test that out. How would you go about testing that? Well, the answer is you would use Metasploit to do that type of testing. So this is how you would do individual testing on your system to make sure that your EDR is able and capable of detecting the attack. So I've got my IP address there. I've got my Kali system is here. And I should go ahead and make my font a little bit bigger. A little bit bigger now. A little bit bigger now. I'm going to change the appearance. We're going to change that font. If I was really smart, I would just change this font so it was always just huge. I'm gonna make that font large and in charge. There we go. We're gonna go bold. We're gonna set it to 18. There we go. There we go. And I thought I already started MSF console. Let me go ahead and close this guy. I think I just opened a new one. Let me close that. I think I did the wrong one, folks. There we go. Here we go. So I got MSF console is running. And now let's go through the instructions and set that up. Let me get my IP address here. We'll go ifconfig. I can't type. Can't type. We have people looking at me. Makes me nervous. All right, I've got my IP addresses. I'm root. I got MSF console. Feeling pretty solid about this. We're going to set our host to be our Windows IP address again, like so. We'll put that to be 10.10.251.168. I hope I'm seeing that right. Old man eyes and all. There we go. Got that R host there. And then we're going to set the L host to be our Linux IP address. That's our listening host. Set that in here. There we go. And I'm going to put in my IP address of my Linux system right here. So I've got 10.10.244.71. Got that set up. We're going to set our exploit to be Windows SMB exec. There we go. It takes a few moments for it. There we go. The default payload is our Meterpreter reverse TCP. So we have those different options set. I'm going to set the SMB user to be administrator. We're going to set the SMB password to be password1234. Then we're going to exploit that Windows computer. And then we're going to do some manual testing, right? Now, the goal of this is if you don't have an automated tool that does that type of testing for you, how do you test for something, right? So we're going to exploit that system, and I can jump back to the other lab, return to lab list, and we can go into the Bluespawn lab, and I can go all the way down to the bottom. And we have some like manual things that we can test for to see if it can actually detect what we're doing. So I'm going to invoke a shell here. So I can do shell. Michelle, my bell. All right. Now we're going to run this long registry key command. And we're running this because imagine there's a CISA alert that comes out. And it says, hey, there's an attack methodology. They're using this registry key for persistence. And now all of a sudden management's like, can we actually detect that? So now if I run it, do we actually see it fire over here on Bluespawn? No, it did not fire. So we have a gap in our analysis. All right. Next, I can run a different one like so. Different registry key, persistence mechanism. Rerun it. Nope, didn't detect that either. So I can exit out of that. And now I can do get system. I'm already running a system. Try to run hash dump. So let's do key scan. So use key scan underscore start a keystroke logger. No detects. Nope, didn't detect anything. I can try to stop it. I got no keystrokes. What's the other one? Hash dump. Does it detect dumping of the password hash dump that way? No, let's try to dump it through LSAS. Pulling off the boot key. Didn't detect that either. All right. So what we're doing with all of this and the reason we're actually running it this way is because we want to find out what oh my gosh, that's awesome. Super cool. It just took a few seconds for it to run. Awesome. Okay. That's actually really, really neat. Let me explain why. So Bluespawn did actually detect some of the things we just did. Ooh, okay. But notice it hung. This is actually a really good test. Simply running and saying whether or not you can detect any malware is cool. But the other thing that you're dealing with a lot of cloud services, especially in Azure, is the problem that you run into of lag. There's a whole bunch of logs that you get out of your cloud services where there's a lag between when the attack happens and the actual alert happens. And in this situation, I ran a bunch of registry key persistence mechanisms, and it took like over 4 minutes for it to fire to detect that. That's a problem. The reason why that's a problem is that 4 minutes can be a really long 4 minutes. A lot of the automated malware out there, if that stager hits and it fires, and then all of a sudden you get persistence mechanisms, the attacker can already have their malware injected into memory and they're off to the races and undetectable at that point. So this is important. We did get a detect on some of the registry key persistence mechanisms that we did, but but it didn't fire in a timely fashion. So that would be something that we would want to test and evaluate, right? So I'm hoping that this kind of is getting you all to the point where it's like, okay, now I get why we're talking about active defense, right? We're going to talk tomorrow about network threat hunting, active defense, and the kind of crafty backdoors and obfuscation. Not as obfuscated as they could be, mind you, but we're going to cover what an obfuscated backdoor looks like on the network. And we're going to cover why it's so important for us to do this type of analysis on network traffic. The point of all of this is we are a long, long, long way for AI and next generation technologies being able to stop a whole bunch of like all of the attacks that are out there in computer security. If anybody is telling you, oh, well, we're going to be able to detect all of the attacks everywhere all of the time, they are lying to you. It is not going to work that way. And that, take heart. That's not a bad thing. That is job stability for absolutely everyone that is out there. All right. So I'm going to do the last step of the labs. I'm going to close this tab and then I'm going to destroy the lab. I'm going to destroy the lab. We're done at that point because now I'm not going to be burning any more credits. It's now going to sleep. I'm not going to burn any more credits. And my lab credits are still going to be alive and active for the rest of the class. All right. So with that, everybody, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're now going to move into an Ask Me Anything section of this class. We can kick up the Discord server, Daryl or Ryan. If you guys can kick up the Discord server, there we go. It's now Ask Me Anything. What questions do you have for me for this particular course? I like to close out last half an hour where people can just ask me any questions they have. Several people are typing. That is very helpful because this Ask Me Anything is not fun if I don't have people questions, like popping in questions. Thanks for the lab. I had a couple of small typos. I'll get those fixed. One of the problems about testing these labs is you get used to them and doing them again and again and again, and you miss the little things, you know? All right. They're still better than anyone else tries to do what they're doing. Yeah, I'll post the new edited slides back to the resources. I'll tell you what, I'll post them up at the end of class because God knows what other weird things I'll do last minute out there as well. Do you believe there are orgs and countries could have done to greatly minimize the attacks like NotPetya? One, patch their systems, Petya and NotPetya. Marisk, yeah, they could have patched, like, remember HK, that whole Marisk attack was against an exploit that had been around for years, a really super long time. So the basic fundamentals that we cover in the intro to security class are right there, front and center. Absolutely true. Can you run Metasploit and Atomic in an operating environment without things breaking beyond repair? Absolutely. I still recommend that you set it up on a test system. Set up a workstation as a test workstation with a test Active Directory user. Do your testing on that system. And when you're done, nuke it from high orbit because it's the only way to be sure. All right. Were you surprised that Bluespawn detected my well, you know what's weird is Bluespawn is weird. Sometimes it detects things really well, sometimes it doesn't. But here's the kick. That is really typical for what we see in a lot of AV EDR environments. It detects stuff sometimes later, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We have customers all the time that are like, well, our AV didn't detect that. Why didn't it detect that? And we're like, no idea. I've got nothing. I don't know. It's just, it's gremlins, man. It's gremlins, right? Don't get them wet. Don't feed them after midnight. Initial access, Eternal Blue tools would have been better guarded. What are your thoughts on AI agents for red and blue team? So I believe that a lot of the automation and AI for red team is important, specifically from the perspective of red team augmentation, right? If you look at what we're doing in red teaming and pen testing and all of this, we need tools to help us deal with the huge complexity for the low-hanging fruit. And AI is great at that. We should be using those tools to augment our pen testing capabilities, get us to the point where we can start doing the tough manual testing, research and development that AI does not do. So that's how I think we should be using it, ICT. Are there any brand spankingly new active defense techniques not covered in this course? There's a bunch of really cool Docker containers I've been playing with. I might bring some in that are kind of neat, but as far as like the overall category of techniques, I don't see any huge techniques that are like fundamentally different approaches to cyber deception. A lot of the concepts are covered in this class as well. What should we do if Bluespawn hangs or doesn't respond? You can just shut down and restart, but also you're kind of learning the point, right? Bluespawn puked. It died. That would be a finding, right? That would be exactly what you wanted to get out of this Devil's Vendettas. That's exactly what you would want to learn. If you're testing and you're running against CrowdStrike, if you're running against Defender, and all of a sudden it freezes, seizes, and pukes and dies and stops responding, boy, that is absolutely something that you would want to report. Upcoming SOC will be different than the last. No, it's going to be the same. I haven't updated the SOC core skills class. The big difference is I will be teaching it at night in Germany. I am going to be over in Munich and we'll be doing some security stuff. We're actually standing up Black Hills InfoSec Germany GmbH. We're starting up an official version of Black Hills InfoSec in Germany and another one in Poland. So yeah, we're spreading into the EU, which is awesome. What are the top IDS IPS systems? Free and open source, relatively cheap in price. Come tomorrow. Come tomorrow. We got some cool stuff. But the big ones you want to be looking at would be Security Onion and Saracata shellcode. What are some good newsletters and vendor-specific reports to receive to stay current? I really like the stuff that's coming out of Verizon still. Mandiant's got great reports, and then also Dragos as well. Your son thinks I stole your shirt. That's awesome. That's awesome. He doesn't like me. He stole your shirt, Daddy. Yeah, it's awesome. How do you build trust with people online, given that it all used to scam and deceive people? I'm gonna need some more context around that. That's one of the things that we focus on a lot, and I might get this question wrong, and I apologize, Jello Beanster, if I do. But with what we do on Discord and what we do in the community at Black Hills InfoSec is we're really trying to make sure that we've got a clean pool, right? If you look at what happened in Twitter, if you look at what happened with, Twitter is the big thing, where all of a sudden all the content moderation was taken, and then it all of a sudden turned into a bunch of racist crap, porn crap, selling advertisements crap, and it got ugly. Like the water got really, really polluted. And that sucked. It became an unfun environment, right? And when you're looking at some places like Blue Sky, or you're looking at like what we do on our Discord, it's highly moderated. And for me, I want to make sure that we're keeping politics, we're keeping religion, we're keeping a lot of the stuff out of our pool in Discord. And that's always a fine line that you're trying to walk there, right? Like you look at what's kind of happened with CISA, and I'll pick on both administrations, where previous administration, the FBI was hitting up Apple to try to get backdoors for encryption. Screw that. That's wrong. I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. That's wrong. Then when you're talking about the current administration, what it is they are or are not doing vis-a-vis the Russians and what they did for getting rid of CISA, screw that. That's wrong. I don't care if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. That's wrong. So we play this game of like, what is InfoSec related? And maybe it touches politics, but is the core mass of the conversation security, or is the core mass associated with being political? So we're constantly balancing that out on the team and trying to balance those things. We aren't trying to radicalize people. Oh no, we are. My goal is to radicalize as many of you as I possibly can in like 4 things. And I keep talking about this. People are like, are we a cult? I don't think we're a cult, but that's what everyone says, right? Like we're totally not a cult. But I keep on saying, if we were a cult, 4 rules of the cult are: number 1, be kind. Number 2, be kind, especially to people you disagree with. And number 3, wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. And 4, this is most important, tip well. So those would be the 4 things that our cult would have on that as well. So we're trying to stay with those things as much as we possibly can with it. All right. How do you think physical supply chain attacks will the post-Lebanon pager attack? Okay, so that's one of those attacks. Once again, it's kind of a horrible attack, right? Like when we're looking at that type of attack, it's kind of indiscriminate. I mean, I'm sure, the pagers were specifically going to a terrorist and terrorist adjacent groups. Okay, but whenever that goes off, you're really like, well, is someone's kid holding it? Like, how do you know who actually has that? And this is one of those things when I was working with DoD and the intelligence community, is there was a tremendous amount of effort that was done if we were going after a specific target of a really bad person. There was a lot of effort that was done to make sure that there would be a limitation of collateral damage. There were absolutely mistakes, huge, colossal mistakes and loss of life, but there was always like loss of life for innocent people. And I know people are like, well, if they're hanging out with terrorists, they're not innocent. Dude, if somebody is a small child, they're innocent. I'm sorry, right? And that was shit that we dealt with and we kind of struggled constantly with. And I still struggle with it today, right? So that pager attack hits in a couple of different ways. From a technological perspective, it's like, damn, like Israel played the long game there. That is, wow. That is some really impressive stuff that they did with that supply chain attack. On the other side, when we're looking at it, I think that all of a sudden gets other people looking at their supply chain, and now they're a little bit more paranoid, making sure that they're getting things perspective that is better. Um, Oh man, everyone send a round of prayers and thoughts and happy well wishes and unicorns to Vaculus. I'm at the hospital, 103 fever, and I'm hyperventilating, but you need to complete the lab. No, you need to go to sleep. Go get better. All of this stuff is recorded. It's going to be in resources. Go get better. You're doing the wrong thing. What do you take the Bluespawn lab to do at the next level? One of the things you would do, Weems, is you would go through and you would start creating like your automation scripts and tying that over to your DTEX and kind of building that out as well. How do we feel about giving Vaculus Megan? How do we feel about giving Vaculus a full catalog to everything at Anti-Siphon, like all classes? Like
I
if you're
got it.
putting up with
I
my
got
crap,
you.
you're on it. Thank you.
Okay.
If you're putting up with my crap and listening to me with 103-degree fever, that's a special kind of special. So we're going to take care of you and make sure that you get all the training that you can possibly get your hands on out there as well. Why am I not going to Denmark? I'm going into Denmark. I'm going into Denmark later on this year. I don't know exactly when I'm going to be there as well. Based on what educators are currently teaching in schools and platforms, there's subject or item you feel is taught that isn't. Yeah, basic networking, basic operating systems, basic architectures. I have people that come out of school, don't understand how an API works. They don't understand how a database works. They don't understand how to work at the command line level of operating systems. They just have a lot of book knowledge. That has got to stop. And if you're looking at universities like DSU, they're doing a really, really, really good job. But so many of the universities are so tied down to the way that they've taught classes for the past 20, 30 years, where everything has got to go through a review board process. And they're kind of working with the mental status of, yeah, we're going to teach this topic that hasn't changed in 50 years, like math or English or whatever. And computer security is not like that. I am actually going into Sweden as well. It's all coming. Stand tight. All right. I'm going to jump to the latest. I'm getting really far behind, so I'm pulling down. Western Governors University, sure, give them a shout out as well. They do a really, really good job too. It sucks whenever you have big name universities that do a worse job than some of the smaller universities out there as well. Stockholm. Stockholm is one of my favorite cities, especially around Christmas time. I'm hoping to get up there and check that out. I have a fever, and the only prescription is active defense and cyber deception. Yeah, today we're going to learn how to install and configure Exchange on-prem and then install all relevant patches, right? All right. Any more questions, you all? Any recommendations on material on how to provide evidence and findings to executives? Okay, so I'll give you a couple of recommendations, Dr. MXMS. So here's how you present to executives, right? Everyone thinks that it's kind of weird growing up and you're in middle school and all the boys get together and they're like, how do you talk to girls? Like there's some kind of secret handshake. Like you go up to a girl and you take an aggressive stance and then she kicks you in the nuts, right? How do I know that it's love? Um, Everyone thinks that it's like that for executives. Like you go up to executives and there's some kind of like secret handshake that you do with them where they know that you're cool, right? And that is absolutely, yeah, today is the aggressive stance day. Um, that is absolutely a horrible way of looking at how to communicate to executives. And anybody that's ever like, here's the way to, you got to talk about the business value to an executive. You gotta speak the business. Gotta speak business to the executives. Um, don't, don't. All right. So here's how you talk to executives. So whenever you're talking to executives, executives are always looking for some very, very simple things. Number one, a clear problem statement. A clear problem statement, right? We want a clear problem statement. Number two, we want to know exactly what levers that you want us to pull. A lot of people, when they're communicating with executives, they go in with the mindset of, I'm going to blow their freaking minds. I am going to sit there and I'm going to talk about IT security and I'm going to break down a packet and an exploit and hex, and they're going to be amazed with everything that I know because I'm awesome. Okay. If you're going in and you're talking to executives and you're trying to blow their freaking minds, you're screwed. They're going to pick that up a mile away. They're not going to be interested. What you need to do is you need to communicate clearly what is the problem. And don't get too technical yet. I'm going to get to that here in a second. The most important part's coming up in a little bit because number one, they want a clear problem statement. And don't be afraid to talk to an executive and try to like communicate with them one-on-one before you have a big presentation, because you were all trained in the movies in the 80s and the 90s that, God, what is that awful TV show? Emily in Paris. Has anyone ever seen that stupid show? Like I started watching that with my wife. I hate that show, right? It's like, and it's also Michael J. Fox, The Secret to My Success, right? Like somehow in Emily in Paris, this like American girl who doesn't speak French at all goes to Paris and blows everyone's minds. And they're all just like, wow, she's really smart. And Secret to My Success with Michael J. Fox, same type of thing, right? And it's just like, oh, wow, this guy just showed up to this meeting and blew everyone's minds. That never is going to happen. So what I recommend is if you have an executive meeting, try to get a meeting before the meeting with one of the executives or one of the more senior people to walk through what you're talking about. So that's important. So what are the levers that they can pull? Make sure that you're clearly articulating, here's the problem, here's the lever that you can pull that'll help me with this problem. Don't give them a whole bunch of puzzle pieces and expect them to put that crap together, right? It's like, well, we've got a problem. It's like playing charades with executives. It's like, we've got a problem. It's a computer security problem. And the executives are like, passwords? No. Patching? No. Is it AI? No. Don't expect executives to like put the puzzle together, right? You got to put the puzzle together with them very quickly. Clearly articulate the problem, clearly articulate what levers they can pull to solve that problem. Now, let's get to the good stuff. A lot of executives, if you bring a problem and you bring a solution, they're going to do a little bit of belly button poking. They're going to ask you questions. And those questions are designed, they don't care what the answer is. I got to be honest with you. They really, really, really don't. But those questions that they ask are designed to make sure that you have thought through the solutions that you're recommending. Those questions are designed to make sure that you understand the problem statement, because they sure as hell don't understand the problem statement. Hell, they may not even completely understand the solution that you're offering them. So in your slides, you're going to say, here is the problem. The next slide will be like, here is the solution. And then they're going to ask questions, and you're going to have backup slides. And those backup slides are going to go deep. You're going to have full technical slides, descriptions, explaining what the problem is, how the problem actually works. You're going to get into, go ahead, get down to the hex. I don't care at that particular point on your backup slide. So when they ask that question, like, Mr. Strand, how do you know that this is actually an exploitable situation in our environment? Allegedly. Then you'd be like, wow, we actually went through, we tested it. Here's some slides. This is what the exploit looks like. We were able to successfully exploit this system. And here's what how the exploit works. Here's me running through the exploit, screenshots and everything. Do you have any further questions? They don't have a clue at all what you just said. More than likely, they don't. But they asked a question to make sure that they trusted that you had put the work in to understanding the problem. Your backup slides can be as technical and as crazy as you possibly want them to be. Then for the levers, same thing. If it's like, we recommend that we actually get X firewall. Well, Mr. Strand, what makes you think that X firewall is best of breed? Go deep. Here's a bunch of shootouts. Here's a bunch of feature sets. Here's the pricing for all these different firewalls. Here's how this firewall works in our environment because we already have that firewall. We already have expertise. We don't need additional training because we already have people trained in that particular firewall. Do you have any questions? So those follow-up slides are there to prove that you have thought through the problem and you have thought through the recommended solution associated with it as well. Okay? Does that make sense? So your initial slide set is clearly articulate the problem, then clearly articulate the recommended lever that they can pull, and then have backup slides that are deep as hell. Now, most people will start deep. They're going to be like, I'm going to prove that I understand this technical problem to you. And they're going to start with that. This goes into prime movers. If you're trying to move in the conversation and prove at the beginning that you're super, super, super bright, you're going to look like an asshole. If you allow the management to ask a technical question, preferably with a hint of sarcasm, then it's safety off, boys and girls. Go deep. It's time to start impressing the living hell out of them with your technical capabilities because they asked for it. This does a couple of things. One, you become a trusted agent because you clearly identify the problems and the solutions. And then the other thing it does is it shows that you're not safe to attack in a meeting. Executives love asking questions, and if people don't have the right answer, they love just kind of being demeaning. It's like, well, I thought that you would have investigated this. And to their credit, right? That's your effing job. You're the technical resource. You shouldn't be stumped by a simple question that they are asking. You shouldn't be offended by a simple question that they are asking. So start simple. They ask questions, go deep. Does that make sense? That was a long answer to that question. It's almost like this is what John would like his employees to do. Docker question. We're going to be using, I just lost that question, but we are going to be using the Cowrie Docker container. We're going to be firing that up. So I'll show you guys how to fire up Docker containers here in just a little bit. What else do we got? More cat pics. I love the cat pics. That's great. EFF. You mentioned Docker. What are some active defense solutions, Docker? We're going to be using Cowrie. And I don't think I'm going to be running CrowdSec in this class. I don't know what that is. I think that sucks. Is there so many? Oh, that's a threat intelligence. Yeah, I don't think we'll be doing CrowdSec. I'll see if I can incorporate it into the AC Hunter Lab. We'll see if we can get that going. The threat intelligence feed that we use in this class, or not in this class, at BHIS is Flare. Oh, it's failed to ban, but with crowdsourced lists. We do talk about failed to ban. We do. But it looks like pricing, though. Huh. All right. Are we thinking of making training bundle or path? Not sure if I already have that or not. We do have a bundle. It's everything that we have, literally everything, for the low price of $1,500. And for the record, at $1,500 for 47 classes is 97% off list price for all of, yes. Yeah, if it comes out within the year that you have the subscription, you absolutely have it. We can give you the link. Megan will get that for you. You guys can all get it, but here's the deal. No one gets it ever. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's absolutely everything that we have. All of our on-demand classes, and we'll get you a link. Yeah, $1,500 for the whole year. It's all out there, and it includes cyber range access for the entire year. With the prices like that, it's crazy, right? Oh, stop me before I strike again. We put it out there, but yeah, no, we don't have people do that. There it is. It's our Black Friday deal, Megan. We keep it up. None of you are going to sign up for it. You should. It's a great deal. But yeah, there it is. There it is. All right. What else do we have? Yeah, most of these on-demand classes are close to $600 a pop. What is the cyber range? It's Meta CTF on that. SANS is like $5,000 a class now. That was true 10 years ago. They're now up around $10,000 a class. So, and if you want SANS quality, like for like nothing, that's us right now. Yeah, so that's where we're at now. But yeah, if you look at our instructors, a whole bunch of us are former fellows, senior, and certified SANS instructors on that as well. Yeah, SANS is $5,000 with 50% off, and we're still cheaper than them. The struggle bus GIF is one of my favorite GIFs now. It's fantastic. Are we better than SANS? No, I'd say we're on par with quality, just because a bunch of us were there, at the beginning of the SANS Institute. Not me, but some of the other anti-siphon instructors were. Because we do. Oh, by the way, the other thing I wanted to talk about tomorrow, don't let me forget, we do have a certification with this, okay? We do have a certification at Anti-Siphon that is a pay-what-you-can certification out there for everybody. So if you're looking for a cert that you can put on your resume, we've got the ACE-T Core cert. Rock on. We're coming, and Megan's going to help remind me because that's what she does. She keeps me on the straight and narrow. That's what she does. All right. Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right, everybody. So get out of here. I will see you bright and early tomorrow. We'll continue on with cyber. We're going to do a couple more active defense things, one more, and then we're moving into the cyber deception. It's coming. It's coming fast. It's coming hard. Lots of hands-on. I'm excited. I will see you all tomorrow. I love you tomorrow. You're only a day away.